Chapter 364. As soon as the tall elder finished his words, 15 inherited disciples of the three sects flew directly to the high platform and occupied a position. No one fell behind. The rest of the casual practitioners looked a little gloomy. After a moment of hesitation, they turned to fight for the other 5 high platforms. This was the home ground of the 3 sections. How dare they compete? Get out of here. The place is mine. Get out of here. How dare you compete with me? You're courting death. One practitioner after another fell down. Some were seriously injured, and some directly turned into corpses and fell to the ground, splashing pools of blood. Su Li stood still and looked coldly at the 5 lively high platforms. There were at least 8 people who didn't move like her. They rushed to occupy the high platforms on the first day, which could only be said to be brainless. The selection battle would last for 3 whole days, and only those who occupied the high platform at the very last moment would be able to obtain a spot. Unless they had absolute confidence in their own strength and were able to intimidate others like the disciples of the 3 sects, they would only be asking for trouble if they went up at this time. However, my goal is different from theirs. Su Li slowly turned her eyes and saw Yulin on the high platform with a cold expression and a sure victory. At this moment, Yulin took out a chair from the universe ring and sat on the high platform. The bloody scene on the 5 high platforms was reflected in her eyes. Then she looked at Fan Zisong, who didn't move, and slightly raised the corner of her mouth. A small sect is not even qualified to carry shoes for my great-grandfather. How dare you plot against me? Why don't you take a look at yourself? How can you country bumpkins compare to my methods? Looking at Yulin's proud back, Fan Zisong gradually narrowed his eyes and heard Wang Yu's urging. Apprentice, do it. What are you waiting for? Have you forgotten the promise you made in front of me? I didn't expect that I made a mistake and accepted an apprentice who was afraid of death. I raised you for hundreds of years in vain. As time went by, Wang Yu's words became more and more unpleasant. Fan Zisong remained unmoved, but his heart completely sank. Before, he still had a glimmer of luck. Maybe the master was not as bad as he thought. It was just a moment of negligence that he misunderstood. But now, there was no more luck. Fairy Red Jade, why do you look so pale? Elder Qing's voice suddenly sounded. Hong Yu, who had been transmitting her voice, was startled, but she maintained her composure. She turned her head and smiled. It's nothing. I was just thinking about cultivation. Sorry for making Elder Qing worry. That's good. Elder Qing chuckled, but he sneered in his heart. He was eager for Wang Yu's accident to reduce Huajian's sect's combat power. How could he really worry about her? 2 days and 2 nights later, the fluctuations of spiritual energy gradually weakened, and there were less than 3 people left on each of the 5 high platforms. All of them were drenched in blood, their spiritual energy exhausted, and they were struggling at death's door. However, there wasn't the slightest trace of retreat in their eyes. Instead, there was only madness and killing intent. It was a killing frenzy. He had lost his mind. The 8 people who had yet to make a move shook their heads and each chose their favorite platform to fly up. Qi Chen was one of them. Die! Die! The quota is mine. As soon as he landed on the edge of the high platform, Qi Chen was attacked by the 3 cultivators together, but the strength of the attack was not as strong as that of a qi refining cultivator. He shook his head slightly, with no pity on his face. He waved his hand and said coldly, Go down. Ah. The 3 people were not Qi Chen's opponents, and they were in poor condition, so they were directly swept off the high platform by Qi Chen. They screamed and fell to the ground, and couldn't get up. However, they didn't die. For such idiots, he didn't want to kill them and bring trouble to himself. At this moment, a skinny young man with a feminine face suddenly appeared on the high platform and stood opposite to Qi Chen. He said with a sinister smile, Fellow practitioner Qi Chen, I've heard a lot about you. I wonder if you can give me the ancient sword on your back. Sure enough, he came for his sword. Chen narrowed his eyes, and his expression gradually tightened. This person was one of the extraordinary people who won yesterday's scuffle. He remembered that his name was Shi Yuan. Fellow practitioner Shi Yuan, Chen was about to speak, but suddenly there was an exclamation from the crowd around him. He and Shi Yuan couldn't help but be stunned, and subconsciously looked around to see if there was anything surprising. This made Chen's face change slightly, and he cried in his heart. How could it be her? On the high platform of the three sects, Yulin looked incredulously at the skinny woman who suddenly appeared in front of her, and wondered, "You want to challenge me? Did you come to the wrong high platform?" A smile appeared on Su Li's indifferent face. "It can't be wrong. It's you." As soon as this was said, the whole square immediately burst into a greater uproar. It was shocking enough that a casual practitioner challenged an inherited disciple of a sect, not to mention that the challenger and the challenged practitioner were both female practitioners. Seeing Su Li's smile, Yulin immediately felt humiliated. She was so angry that she laughed. "I have seen a lot of people like you. Do you want to become famous after one fight to attract the attention of the sect? Unfortunately, you found the wrong person. If you choose him, you may have a chance. But you want to step on me? In your dream." Su Li glanced at Fan Zisong, who was pointed at, and smiled more. It turns out that the first disciple of Danxia Mount of Huajian sect defeats the enemy by talking. I have really learned something new. Hearing this, Yulin's pretty face was immediately covered with frost. "You're courting death." She used all her strength in anger, and even used the means of a poison master. She had never been humiliated like this before. The bitch in front of her must die. Su Li dodged the palm wind easily, but she didn't stop talking. She continued, "Oh, is this the temperament of the first disciple of Danxia Mount? She is worse than a 3-year-old child." Seeing that she dodged the attack so easily, the practitioners, who were still worried about Su Li, were surprised at the same time, and immediately changed into a look of exuberant interest. This mysterious female practitioner seems to be no worse than Fairy Yulin. That's right. That female practitioner is not an idiot. Why would she go up to die? Nonsense. I just heard you say that the female practitioner is doomed. You must have heard it wrong. The audience became lively again, and everyone was paying attention to the development of Yulin on the high platform. If the mysterious female casual practitioner won, it would be a rare story. Fan Zisong frowned and looked at Yulin, who was attacking crazily on the high platform. He was just about to get up and fly over to challenge Yulin to fulfill his promise, but this woman challenged Yulin one step ahead of him. Was it a coincidence, or, boy, you are lucky. This female casual practitioner has a mysterious origin, and even I can't see through her. Yulin is definitely not her opponent. You can continue to seal your cultivation, and it is absolutely no problem for you to reach the secret realm of shattered spirits. The elder with the jade token on his chest transmitted the sound in silence. Fan Zisong nodded imperceptibly, but his eyes were fixed on Su Li. He always felt that things were not as simple as the mysterious elder thought. Too weak. As the first disciple of Danxia Mount, your cultivation is so weak. Are you really fishing for fame? Shut up. Yulin's delicate face was full of ferocity at the moment. This woman's body was like a catkin, and she couldn't touch it at all. She had been talking since the beginning of the battle, and her words were so harsh that her lungs were about to explode. Swish. She suddenly stopped, took a deep breath, and barely calmed down. She stared at Su Li with eyes full of killing intent. You are a coward who only knows how to hide. How dare you say that to me? Do you dare to take a blow from me? Su Li raised her eyebrows and still smiled, coincidentally. I am also tired of hiding. As you wish. After saying that, she stretched out her slender and white palms from the black robe, and pressed on Yulin's chest like a phantom. So fast, I can't hide. Yulin's face changed slightly, and she immediately gritted her teeth. She ran the poisonous skill in her body, and the palms hidden in her sleeves turned dark. Go to hell. Boom. The two palms collided, and immediately set off a violent fluctuation of spiritual power. Even the tactical matrix shield rippled. The elder who was responsible for maintaining the tactical matrix changed his face slightly, and immediately increased the input of spiritual power to maintain the stability of the tactical matrix. Ah! With a scream, a black shadow shot out of the high platform and smashed into the ground like a cannonball. Who lost? Who is it? Everyone stared at the ground, and even Wang Yu and Elder Qing couldn't help but stand up, with a surprised look on their faces. After a while, the smoke and dust on the high platform finally dissipated, and Su Li showed up. She still had a faint smile on her face, but now her smile made many people feel a chill in their hearts. Unscathed. This woman was unscathed, and even her hair and clothes were not messed up. This was a female practitioner who was much more powerful than Yu Lin. Cough, cough, cough. Yu Lin, who was lying in the human-shaped pit, coughed violently. Immediately, everyone saw Yu Lin climb out with her face covered with dirt. Before she stood up, she couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood, and her pneuma weakened. Her eyes were full of hatred. Bearing the stares of the surrounding people, she grasped the dirt tightly, but dared not look up again. Instead, she took out an elixir from the universe ring and stuffed it into her mouth to heal. She was too powerful. If she hadn't taken back some strength at the last moment, she would probably have died. You wait and see. If you don't kill me now, you will die when you enter the secret realm of shattered spirits. A strong ruthlessness flashed in Yu Lin's eyes, and she entered the state of meditation. The selection was not over yet. As long as she could recover half of her strength, she still had a chance to enter the secret realm. Su Li didn't look at Yu Lin, but directly sat down in Yu Lin's original position. The other 13 people of the other sects all showed fear in their eyes, but didn't take any action. They were sure to get the places, and Yu Lin's life and death had nothing to do with them. As for Huajian's sect, Yu Lin was originally an outsider, and Wang Yu was too happy to seek justice for her. But she still had to pretend to be polite. After glancing at Elder Qing, she pretended to be helpless and said, I didn't expect this casual practitioner to have some means. Yu Lin is no match for her, and she can only blame her bad luck. Elder Qing nodded with a smile. Indeed, the rules of the 25 sects can't be broken. He was really happy this time. Huajian's sect had one less person. If they met in the secret realm of shattered spirits, the disciples of Meng's sect would definitely have the upper hand. Besides, this woman was a casual practitioner, and she didn't belong to any sect. Chapter 365. After the situation calmed down, the high platforms of the three sects became quiet again. 8 practitioners rejoined the remaining 5 high platforms, and the competition became fierce again. However, for the practitioners who had just watched the drama, the following battles became a little boring. Many people even left and didn't want to wait for the final result. Su Li sat quietly on the high platform, and her attention fell on Qi Chen's high platform. Although Shi Yuan was powerful, he was at the same level as Qi Chen. Without using his trump card, no one could defeat the other. In the end, Shi Yuan had no choice but to occupy another high platform. Just now, Yu Lin, who had recovered from her injury, also occupied one of the individual cultivator's high platforms. Although the individual cultivator who originally occupied that platform cursed, he had no choice but to jump off the high platform after the battle was fruitless. Time flew, and it was night in the blink of an eye. Although it was not midnight yet, there was no change in the people on the high platforms, because all the living people except those on the high platforms had left the tactical matrix. The selection battle is over in advance. The tall elder reappeared, and his rumbling voice spread throughout the square. He glanced over the 20 high platforms, and stayed on the high platform where Su Li was for a moment. Then he waved his hand and threw out 20 jade talismans in the shape of tokens, suspending them in front of the 20 people. He said in a low voice, "Refine this token." Everyone immediately began to refine it. Su Li took the jade talisman and poured her spiritual power into it. Soon, she sensed a trace of connection with the jade talisman and its various functions. It was a treasure to pass through the secret realm of shattered spirits, and it was also a means for the 25 sects to monitor the practitioners in case the precious treasures fell into the hands of casual practitioners. Of course, the second function would not be shown on the jade talisman. Otherwise, no casual practitioner would be willing to explore the secret realm. Seeing that everyone had finished refining, the tall elder nodded with satisfaction. He waved his hand and threw out a delicate spiritual boat the size of a palm. It grew to the size of an attic in the wind, causing the practitioners below to exclaim. This is a middle-grade flying magic weapon. I have seen it once from a distance. Only the big sects have it. Who on earth is this elder? He is definitely not a member of the 3 sects. The tall elder turned a deaf ear to the discussion below and said loudly, all of you, now leave with me to the entrance of the secret realm of shattered spirits. A look of excitement flashed across the faces of the rogue cultivators who had never been on a spirit boat before. They flew up without hesitation. Although the true disciples of the 3 sects were also a little curious, they did not show it so obviously. A bunch of ignorant bumpkins. Yulin snorted coldly and looked back at Su Li, who was still in the same place. She flew into the spirit boat first, regardless of the ugly faces of other inherited disciples. Master, be careful. LVU's voice came into her ears. Su Li inadvertently glanced at the green-robed elder standing in the crowd, and then nodded imperceptibly. She got up and landed on the deck of the spiritual boat. Seeing that everyone was here, the tall elder immediately drove the spiritual boat away without looking at Wang Yu and others. The elders of the 25 sects are still so arrogant, Elder Qing sighed, and there was also a touch of envy in Wang Yu's eyes. If they stayed in a small sect, they would never be able to break through to Yuanying realm. Only by staying in a big sect could they go far on the road of cultivation. Thinking of this, Wang Yu sighed helplessly in her heart. Because of Yulin, she had the opportunity to enter Zihan school. However, she was blinded by greed and dissatisfied with the reward, which displeased Yulin's grandfather. Yulin's grandfather forced Yulin to enter the sect, and she didn't get anything in return. Thinking of it now, she regretted it. Unfortunately, there was no medicine for regret in the world. In the high sky, a spiritual boat was flying fast. On the deck of the spiritual boat, 20 young practitioners who were about to enter the secret realm of shattered spirits occupied their own areas, except for the disciples of the sections. But the 5 disciples of Huajian sect were in a different situation. In the corner of the spiritual boat, Yulin was surrounded by the 3 inherited disciples of Fujian Mount and Qinghua Mount. They laughed from time to time, as if they were not going to the secret realm of shattered spirits for adventure, but for sightseeing. Junior sister apprentice Lin, don't worry. After entering the secret realm, the 3 of us will protect you well. Yes, senior fellow apprentices will never let you get hurt. Yulin, who had cleaned herself up, had returned to her usual beauty. Every frown and smile exuded charm, which made the 3 people around her swayed and intoxicated. Yulin said in a soft voice, "Thank you for your care. I thought that the disciples of Huajian sect were very indifferent, but I didn't expect you to be so warm-hearted. I'm really touched." Her appearance was the best among the female disciples of Huajian sect. Now when she acted coquettishly, she immediately fascinated the other 3. Yulin looked weak, but her heart was cold and emotionless. She had not recovered from her injury, so she naturally needed to find some guards. Fortunately, these inherited disciples of Huajian sect were easy to deceive. Turning her eyes, her gaze fell on Su Li, who closed her eyes and rested not far away. Her eyes were cold and insidious, as if she was looking at a dead person. Even if I can't poison you to death, you can never escape from the pursuit of Zihan sect. At this moment, all her hatred had been transferred to Su Li. Even Fan Zisong, who had always been regarded as a thorn in her side, was not taken seriously by her at this moment. A little further away from Yulin and the other three, Fan Zisong leaned against the edge of the spiritual boat alone. Seeing this scene, he could not hide his worry in his eyes. This woman took the thunder for me. No, I have to remind her. Seeing Su Li closed her eyes and put on her clothes, Fan Zisong gritted his teeth, stood up and sat beside Su Li. After hesitating for a moment, he transmitted the sound, "Fellow practitioner." Su Li opened her eyes and turned her eyes. Her emotionless eyes fell on Fan Zisong, which made the latter feel creepy. What's the matter? Her voice was as cold as spring water, which made Fan Zisong nervous. He took a breath and continued to transmit the sound. When you go to the secret realm of shattered spirits, you must be careful of Yulin's revenge. Yulin's grandfather is an elder of Zihan's sect. If she sends a message to Zihan's sect, people of Zihan's sect may attack you in the secret realm. And the other three in my sect seem to be bewitched. I'm afraid. I got it. Su Li interrupted Fan Zisong coldly. She got up and left to find another place to sit down. Fan Zisong was stunned for a moment. Then he shook his head helplessly and smiled bitterly in his heart. Her reaction. He was regarded as a lecher by this woman. She probably didn't take his words seriously. Unfortunately, I can't protect myself. I don't know whether she can escape from Yulin's cruelty. After Su Li sat down again, she didn't look at Fan Zisong, but she frowned in her heart. She wanted to attract Yulin's attention to herself and let Fan Zisong get out of danger temporarily. But she didn't expect that Fan Zisong would come to remind her kindly. Just now, she saw Yulin looked at Fan Zisong with resentment again. She knew that the previous arrangement was in vain. Forget it. Let it be in vain. After entering the secret realm, I will find senior fellow apprentice as soon as possible. Anyway, the poisonous spirit-devouring insect in his body should be removed. Without much hesitation, Su Li glanced at Fan Zisong, who dared not come over again, and became silent again. Half a day later, a round mountain peak made of green mountain stones came into sight. From a distance, it looked like a green cloud falling on the ground. Green water and Cloud Mountain, the entrance of the secret realm of shattered spirits. Someone recognized the terrain and exclaimed, which immediately attracted many people's attention. The spiritual boat fell quickly, and the green water and Cloud Mountain enlarged rapidly. In a blink of an eye, it was verdant. They entered the green water and Cloud Mountain. Whoosh! After the spiritual boat swept over a mountain peak, a giant pit with a flat bottom appeared in front of everyone. It was still surrounded by mountain stones, forming a perfect circle. The bottom of the pit was brightly lit, as if it was daytime. From the spirit boat, one could vaguely see the figures of people moving on the giant platform in the pit, and in the center of the platform, there was a round arch that was dozens of feet high, rippling inside, reflecting a completely different scene from the outside world. Seeing such a spectacular scene, several casual practitioners who had never been here couldn't help but exclaim. Everything in the world is so wonderful that such a natural spectacle can appear. Just seeing the entrance of the secret realm makes the trip worthwhile. Su Li held the edge of the spiritual boat, with a faint fluctuation in her eyes. This scene was similar to the scene when she opened the reincarnation mirror in the past. But now the people below were all juniors in Zhuji realm, while the top talents of the entire Zhozhou region gathered there at that time. She slowly closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she suddenly opened her eyes, a frightening light flashed. In this life, I won't be wrong again. Those who owed me back then, no matter who it was, I will make them pay for this debt without leaving a single cent behind. Now, let's start from the secret realm of shattered spirits. Boom! The spirit boat crashed down and stopped at the edge of the ring-shaped rock. The tall elder stood straight and looked at the scene under the rock. A trace of nostalgia flashed across his face, and he said indifferently, "Let's talk about the past." After passing through the tactical matrix and landing on the platform below, you just need to wait for the secret realm. Only practitioners whose bone age is less than 800 years can pass through the tactical matrix. I don't need to remind you. You should know this. Now go down. As soon as the tall elder finished his words, someone couldn't wait to pass through the tactical matrix. Su Li walked slowly at the end. After Fan Zisong also landed, she was ready to pass through the tactical matrix. But at this moment, the tall elder suddenly shot a jade rune in his hand. If you can come out of the secret realm of shattered spirits alive, you can join our Lei Yu sect with this rune and enjoy the treatment of an inner branch disciple. As for casual practitioners, there is no way out. Then, he flashed away without waiting for Su Li's answer. Lei Yu sect, which ranks 13th among the 25 sects, Su Li smiled slightly. After looking at the jade rune, she put it away directly. She tiptoed and landed like a willow catkin. After she left, a light flashed, and the tall elder reappeared, frowning. Hearing the name of our Lei Yu sect, does this woman really not care, or is she ignorant? After thinking for a while, he shook his head and left. Chapter 366. Su Li floated to the ground and glanced around calmly. At the entrance of the vast secret realm, there were already thousands of qualified practitioners waiting here. Most of the practitioners came in groups of 3 or 5, and whispered incessantly. Glancing at Fan Zisong, Yu Lin and others not far away from her, Su Li kept silent and continued to wait. She was at the outermost edge of the platform, and the closer to the gate of the secret realm, the higher the status of practitioners. At this moment, a slightly abrupt voice came into her ears. Look! The young man closest to the gate of the secret realm is Bei Shaoyang. Following this low exclamation, everyone in the surroundings followed his gaze and looked over. Then, an even louder discussion broke out. It's really him, the inherited disciple of Yushu's sect who has the most potential to become the Holy Sun. Yes, he has only cultivated for 600 years, so he can enter the secret realm of shattered spirits. It is said that this evildoer can escape unscathed from an old ancestor of Jindan realm with his cultivation at the peak of Zhuji realm. Who among his peers can be his opponent? I'm afraid only Qin Xianghan of Zihan sect can fight against him. It's a pity that Qin Xianghan has cultivated for more than 1,000 years and can't enter the secret realm. She is still inferior to Bei Shaoyang. The discussion grew louder, and soon spread to where Bei Shaoyang was. Senior fellow apprentice, listen, they are all talking about you. The other inherited disciples of Yushu's sect looked at Bei Shaoyang with admiration in their eyes. Some of them might be older than Bei Shaoyang, but the cultivation circle respected the strong. Bei Shaoyang was so powerful that he was naturally respected by all inherited disciples of Yushu's sect. Bei Shaoyang looked at the gate of the secret realm without any change in his expression, as if the discussion around him didn't affect him at all. The secret realm of shattered spirits is about to open. Don't be impatient and echo the crowd. When his voice came out, all the disciples of Yushu's sect from different peaks responded respectfully and calmed down together. Seeing this scene, Su Li's eyes flashed a trace of softness. She used to be admired by thousands of people and loved by all disciples of Yushu's sect, just like Bei Shaoyang. Is Bei Shaoyang a disciple of my master? Su Li was thoughtful. She had been in the cultivation circle for more than 1,200 years, including the time she spent in the reincarnation mirror. Bei Shaoyang was only over 600 years old, and all the other disciples were less than 800 years old. Naturally, she didn't know them. Well, I can't return to Yushu's sect in a short time. It's no use to think too much. Well, I can't return to Yushu's sect in a short time. But at this moment, Bei Shaoyang frowned and turned to look in the direction of Su Li, but he found nothing. Someone noticed Bei Shao and asked. Someone. And Liang's and Bei Shaoyang. Bei Shaoyang shook his head and returned to his original appearance, but there was a trace of doubt in his heart. Sect, Li sect disciples of sect. And. The competition in the big sects was fierce and cruel. Ever since he started his cultivation, he had encountered countless dangers, but he had always relied on his innate intuition to escape. Now that his intuition had appeared again, he could not ignore it. Sect Su is Li among them. Li of sect and Bei Xiaoliang was silent, but there was a slight expectation in his eyes. He thought that this trip to the secret realm of shattered spirits would be as boring as last time. Now, it seemed that he might gain a lot. At the same time, Yulin, who was also waiting in the periphery area, took back the carrier rune in her hand. She couldn't hide the joy in her eyes. She turned to look at Su Li and sneered. I got in touch. Bitch, you wait and see. The secret realm of shattered spirits will be your burial place. Time passed by slowly. One day was nothing for practitioners. By the next morning, the last spiritual boat arrived, and all the 5,000 practitioners selected from the Jouzhou region had arrived. As the last practitioner passed through the tactical matrix and landed on the platform, the gate of the secret realm moved immediately. The bright rings around it rotated slowly, and then turned into phantoms that couldn't be seen clearly after a few seconds. The calm ripples turned into a whirlpool with a slight suction. The secret realm is open. Before the practitioner who had been here more than once finished his words, Bei Xiaoliang jumped into it and disappeared. With him taking the lead, the rest of the disciples didn't hesitate and poured into it one after another. The practitioners on the platform decreased rapidly, and soon it was the turn of the practitioners from the outer dimension. Let's go. Yulin glanced at Su Li and stepped into it with the 3 people of Huajian sect. Su Li still stood still. Seeing this, Fan Zisong had to go first. Just when half of his body was about to disappear into the whirlpool, Su Li suddenly moved. She stretched out her fingers and flicked, and a transparent mark fell into the back of Fan Zisong's neck. Then she disappeared into the whirlpool. Sensing a trace of the vague mark, Su Li was slightly relieved. She succeeded. The fluctuation of the whirlpool could perfectly cover the tracing mark she planted. Glancing at the empty surroundings, Su Li didn't hesitate and flashed into the whirlpool. After a short period of darkness, the scene changed. Su Li opened her eyes and found herself in an empty and lonely wasteland. She couldn't see anyone as far as she could see. How could I be transmitted to this place in Jituyuan? Su Li frowned. Without saying anything, she identified the direction and flew quickly. Jituyuan was the most barren place in the entire secret realm of shattered spirits. There was basically no chance. It was very far from the converging place of Nimbus that she was going to this time. Fortunately, the secret realm of shattered spirits would be open for 2 months. As long as she could get there and spend about 7 days to absorb Nimbus, she could reach the 12th hurdle of Lianqi realm. She had enough time to hurry. 3 days later, Su Li just left the area of Jituyuan. Suddenly, her heart moved, and the pneuma of the tracing mark became extremely clear. Fan Zisong is not far from me. To avoid trouble, I should resolve the poisonous spirit-devouring insect on him first. Thinking of this, she slightly adjusted the direction and continued to rush. At the same time, in the dark and dense forest, Fan Zisong leaned against a giant tree with a pool of blood on the ground. He wiped the remaining blood on the corner of his mouth and stared at the 3 people in front of him with a gloomy face. Do you really want to listen to Yulin's nonsense? Are you trying to kill me? The tall and thin young man snorted coldly. Fan Zisong, don't play tricks on me. You are just a servant of Mount Head, not even an inherited disciple. How can you be regarded as a fellow disciple of our sect? Right. Another inherited disciple of Qinghua Mount stood out and sneered. I have heard from junior sister apprentice Yulin that you are a lowly servant. Just because Mount Head likes you, you embezzled junior sister apprentices practicing resources openly and secretly. It is unforgivable. Even if you escape today, we will report to Master Uncle and punish you severely after we get out. Fan Zisong was silent. These people had been completely fascinated by Yulin, and they wouldn't listen to anything he said. So, he didn't need to care about the old friendship. Swish! With a thought, the flying sword was unsheathed and floated in front of him, pointing at the 3 people with cold light. The 3 people of Huajian sect were immediately angry. How dare you take the initiative to attack us? You are courting death. Fan Zisong looked cold. without any affection for fellow disciples. Just when the four flying swords were about to collide, suddenly, boom! A terrifying spiritual pressure poured down without warning. A ferocious human face suddenly appeared at the root of the giant tree that Fan Zisong was leaning against. The hanging branches turned into sharp swords in the blink of an eye, penetrating the chests of the three people, leaving a basin-sized bloody hole. "Help me!" The young man was full of horror. He only uttered 2 words, and then his eyes dimmed quickly. He fell to the ground without any vitality. The other 2 didn't even have a last word. Ding! Clang! The 3 flying swords fell to the ground and collided with each other, making 2 crisp sounds, which seemed more terrifying in the quiet forest. What's going on? Fan Zisong's pupils shrank suddenly. He leaned against the giant tree and didn't see the human face, nor did he see what penetrated the bodies of the 3 people. "I can't stay here for a long time. I have to leave first." Fan Zisong focused his mind and didn't have time to care about the treasures on the corpses of the 3 people. He drove the flying sword to escape without saying a word. Shortly after he left, the human face on the giant tree reappeared, but it was not as ferocious as before. Instead, there was an indescribable calmness. "Since it is your blood that awakens me, I will spare your life this time. These 3 corpses can help me recover a little, and my roots can continue to extend." There was a low murmur in the nothingness, and the ground where the corpses were immediately made a strange grumbling sound. Then it turned into a small green swamp and sank the corpses into the ground. In the blink of an eye, the corpses were restored without any trace. A few hours later, Fan Zisong came out from the side of the dense forest. Looking at the empty green plain, he breathed a sigh of relief, but there was still a trace of fear in his eyes. Although he didn't know why the existence in the dark didn't hurt him, the situation just now was absolutely life-threatening and very dangerous. What is this place? It's a pity that the map of the secret realm mastered by Huajian's sect only occupies a small part. This place is obviously not in the map description. Looking at the dense forest behind him, Fan Zisong took a breath, hesitated for a moment, and sat in meditation to recover. But he suddenly woke up after a moment of meditation, and his face looked terrible. His speed of recovering genuine qi slowed down. After hesitating for a moment, Fan Zisong stretched out his right hand and found that the whole palm had become dark, and something could be vaguely seen wriggling in it. But as long as he tried to force this thing out, it would quickly become silent again, and he couldn't sense it. "Boy, don't try to recover genuine qi. When you fought with your 3 companions just now, the poisonous spirit-devouring insect has completely awakened. At least 30% of the nimbus you refined into your body has been swallowed by the poisonous spirit-devouring insect. If you go on like this, you will only speed up your death." Fan Zisong fell silent. He was chased by the 3 people all the way, and he had no way to escape. Now he survived. But, the genuine qi in his body was less than 10%. How could he continue in the secret realm of shattered spirits if he didn't recover? Wait for death. Fan Zisong suddenly smiled and transmitted the sound, "Senior, although my cultivation is low, I don't want to wait for death unwillingly. Just let me be willful for once." Chapter 367. An undisguised Numa approached quickly, and a black shadow appeared not far away in the blink of an eye. "Boy, hide in the forest." The elder in the jade token shouted anxiously, but Fan Zisong was unmoved. When the distance was close, he clearly noticed the fluctuation of a tracing mark behind his neck. This person's target was him, and he couldn't escape at all. When did he fall into the trap? Fan Zisong frowned and thought about it, but he got nothing. After getting familiar with it, the outline of the black shadow gradually became clear. Fan Zisong was stunned when he saw it. "It's you." He thought of many enemies, including Yulin, who was missing, but he didn't expect that the person was her. Su Li saw that Fan Zisong was in a low state, but his life was not in danger for the time being. She was a little relieved, took out the tactical matrix board, and opened a protective illusory boundary to cover them. Boy, now you can't leave even if you want to. The elder in the jade token sighed bitterly. He obviously misunderstood the boundary as a tactical matrix for trapping people. Fan Zisong was silent for a moment, and said first, may I ask why you hate my Huajian sect? Su Li targeted Yulin before, and now followed him to deal with him. He couldn't help thinking. While he was talking, Su Li suddenly stepped forward and grabbed his throat. She flicked her fingers, and a black elixir shot into Fan Zisong's throat accurately. It turned into medicine and spread into his body. Fan Zisong's face changed dramatically. You ate it. Before he finished his words, he fell to the ground and fainted. The elder in the jade token was so anxious, but his soul couldn't leave the jade token, so he could only stare. It's very painful to detoxify the poisonous spirit-devouring insect. It's better for you to pass out. Su Li suddenly said something inexplicably, and her indifferent gaze seemed to fall on the elder through the jade token. The elder in the jade token was immediately shocked, and he didn't dare to move. Was she talking to herself, or was she talking to him? It doesn't seem that she is here for revenge. Instead, she is here to detoxify the silly boy, as she said, the elder observed carefully. Seeing that Su Li was meditating beside Fan Zisong, he felt a little relieved. He could do nothing but wait for the result quietly. Time passed, and a day and a night passed in the blink of an eye. Finally, at a certain moment on the third day, Fan Zisong let out a painful groan and woke up slowly. Where is this? His eyes were bewildered, and his vision when he looked at the people around him was a little blurry. 20 or so hours were extremely short in the long lifespan of a cultivator, but for him just now, it was too long, so long that he had forgotten what had happened before he fell asleep. Fortunately, this state did not last long. His mind cleared up and he immediately remembered everything that had happened before. He straightened up and looked at Su Li, who slowly opened her eyes and looked at him. After a moment of silence, he said, Am I still alive? Su Li raised her eyebrows and waved her hand to disperse the tactical matrix. It seemed that she was about to leave. Fan Zisong was even more confused and immediately said, Wait. He reached out and pulled Su Li's sleeves. Inadvertently, he saw that his palms were white, without any dark stains. The poison of the spirit-devouring goo has been removed. Fan Zisong's eyes suddenly widened and he was shocked. Suddenly, he thought of something and looked up at Su Li. You helped me. Why? You talk too much. Su Li patted the non-existent dust on her sleeves and frowned. Fan Zisong suddenly looked embarrassed. He was impulsive just now, but he was rude. Although there were many puzzles in his heart, he didn't know how to ask for a while. What's the matter with your injuries? Su Li frowned slightly. With Fan Zisong's cultivation, even if there was the spirit-devouring goo, he shouldn't be so embarrassed in just a few days after entering the secret realm. I am ashamed to say that it was Yulin who bewitched the disciples of my sect. Although he didn't understand why Su Li cared about him so much, Fan Zisong still explained clearly what happened before and after, including the strange death of the 3 people of Huajian sect. Su Li looked thoughtful. She wouldn't feel anything even if the 3 inherited disciples of Huajian sect died. However, she was quite concerned about the weird justice. Even Fan Zisong didn't see clearly what attacked Huajian sect, which means that the existence who secretly attacked was far more powerful than him. It's strange. There should be no existence of Jindan realm in this secret realm. Could it be that there were various changes in the secret realm after 1,000 years? After thinking for a moment, Su Li said, Do you remember that place? Fan Zisong was shocked and said in a stern voice, Fellow practitioner, that place is really dangerous. Practitioners in Zhuji realm have no power to resist at all. Su Li frowned gradually. Fan Zisong's voice became lower and lower, and finally, there was only a bitter smile on his face. He said helplessly, I don't remember it very clearly, but if I go to that place again, I will definitely recognize it. It's better for me to take you with me, and we can take care of each other on the way. Su Li didn't answer, but just looked at Fan Zisong calmly. Fan Zisong was uncomfortable under her gaze. After a while, he couldn't help but admit defeat. He said frankly, "You saved my life, and I am grateful." "What's wrong with that?" Su Li withdrew her gaze and looked straight at the dense forest calmly. She said slowly, "You don't have to thank me. I was just entrusted by others, and I am loyal to them. I didn't take you with me because I was afraid that you would be a hindrance. Since you are not afraid of death, just follow me." After that, Su Li walked to the dense forest. The bitterness on Fan Zisong's face was more obvious, but he was not convinced in his heart. What she said just now was really hurtful. But, was entrusted by others, and she was loyal to them? In his memory, there was basically no one who matched Su Li's description. Even Wang Yu couldn't deal with the poisonous spirit-devouring insect. Among the people he knew, only the senior in the Jade Token knew how to deal with it. This woman was probably lying. But why did she lie? Moreover, he faintly felt that there was a familiar quality in this woman. The sense of déjà vu lingered, but when he thought about it carefully, no one could match it. Forget it. If I can't figure it out, I won't think about it. Since she saved my life, she will definitely not hurt me. Fan Zisong scratched his head. Although he was still a little frightened, he did not hesitate to follow her. Hearing the footsteps behind her, Su Li didn't look back. They walked in the dense forest one after another. Fan Zisong adjusted the direction from time to time according to his memory, and finally returned to the original place after 6 hours. "It's here." Looking at the familiar giant tree in front of him, Fan Zisong stopped. Suddenly he thought of something and suddenly turned his head to look around. His face instantly became extremely pale. "The bodies are gone." Su Li narrowed her eyes slightly. According to Fan Zisong, 3 people died here a day ago, but there was no smell of blood in the air, and there was no trace of death on the ground, as if no one had ever been here. "Could it be that you remember wrongly?" Su Li asked aloud. Fan Zisong shook his head repeatedly and walked to the giant tree, saying, "I was leaning on this tree at that time." Boom. Before he finished his words, a familiar trembling feeling suddenly came. When his pupils suddenly contracted, he finally saw the weapon that killed the 3 people of Huajian sect. The tree branch. The murderer was this giant tree. "It's so fast. I can't see it clearly, and I can't dodge it." Fan Zisong breathed rapidly, staring at the afterimage that attacked him, but his body couldn't keep up. He could only watch the branches penetrate his body and die like the 3 people of Huajian sect. "By the way, it doesn't matter if I die, but she can't." At the critical moment, Fan Zisong shivered and tried in vain to block all the branches with his body. But at this moment, he suddenly saw a black shadow flash in front of him, and then the picture froze at this moment. All the afterimages that shot at him stopped abruptly. Fan Zisong stared at the scene in front of him blankly. He opened his mouth, but found that he didn't know what to say. He even thought that he had an illusion because he was afraid of death. This mysterious female practitioner, who was disproportionate to the giant tree, directly restrained the horrible branches with her hands. It turns out that it's a tree demon. Su Li's eyes were gloomy, and she snorted coldly. She exerted force with her palms, and the branches as thick as washbasins exploded with a boom, directly turning into flying sawdust. "Human clan. You dare to hurt me. You must die." A ferocious human face reappeared on the root of the giant tree, making a low roar full of anger. Then Fan Zisong was horrified to see that all the branches of the giant tree came to life, and the ends of the branches transformed into snake heads spitting out their tongues. Thousands of cold snake eyes stared at Su Li and Fan Zisong densely, covering the sky. Fan Zisong had goosebumps all over his body, and his forehead couldn't stop sweating. At this moment, he finally understood that what Su Li said was true. In front of such a monster, he was indeed a hindrance and a burden. Such a terrible monster is unheard of. "How will you deal with it, benefactor?" He looked at Su Li, but found that the latter still looked calm. She sneered mercilessly, "Fancy and useless. Is this your means?" The tree demon, who wanted to see Su Li scared, immediately became angry. Without hesitation, he controlled all the snake heads to attack Su Li and Fan Zisong. "Despicable human, I'll tear you to shreds." Fan Zisong's scalp was numb, but Su Li waved her hand to set a tactical matrix to protect him. Then she stamped her feet and rushed directly into the snake heads. "Benefactor, be careful," he exclaimed, and a strong sense of guilt rose in his heart. He shouldn't have told this matter and put his benefactor in danger for no reason. Ding! 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 In the nothingness that Fan Zisong couldn't see clearly, Su Li propped up a shield. The snake heads gnawed frantically, making a continuous sound. After only a few seconds, the shield seemed to be broken. At this distance, he should not be able to see it. Su Li took a deep breath. She wiped the universe ring with one hand and took out a standard flying sword of Danxia mount. This was a gift from Fan Zisong. She didn't expect it to be useful now. She made a gesture with her hands, and dozens of transparent marks were condensed into the flying sword in half a breath. As there were more and more transparent marks, the flying sword immediately trembled violently. Crack, crack, cracks appeared on the sword, and in the blink of an eye, they covered the whole area like a spider web. When the flying sword reached the limit of breaking, Su Li's eyes changed. She used 120% of her strength to shoot the flying sword into the main body of the giant tree. Her cold shout immediately echoed in Fan Zisong's ears. Chapter 368. Boom! 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 The continuous deafening sound almost broke the eardrum. Before Fan Zisong could see clearly, he was completely submerged by the escaping shock wave. The entire protective tactical matrix was full of broken sawdust, which creaked under the violent aftermath. It seemed that it would break in the next breath. Whoosh! The storm lasted for a long time and finally subsided. The tactical matrix completed its final mission and broke apart. The strong smell of trees came into his nose. Fan Zisong stared blankly at the giant tree which had been blown into a small piece of tree root. Except for the place where he was covered by the tactical matrix, the ground was covered with a thick layer of sawdust powder. The ground was full of broken snakehead branches which had lost their spirituality and unknown fragments. Is the tree demon dead? Fan Zisong was shocked. He looked around the empty dense forest and shouted in a trembling voice, "Benefactor." His voice echoed in the dense forest and spread far away. But there was no response for a long time, as if he was the only one left in the entire dense forest. Did the mysterious woman and the tree demon perish together? Fan Zisong thought with loss and guilt. The shock wave produced by the woman's spell was far beyond the power of the peak of Zhuji realm. It was difficult for him to resist even the aftermath, not to mention the woman who was in the center of the impact. "What are you doing? Come down quickly." But at this moment, a familiar and indifferent voice suddenly sounded. Fan Zisong was stunned for a moment, and then his face showed joy. The benefactor was not dead. He walked quickly to the source of the voice, but when he reached the edge of the tree root, he saw a hole in the root that could easily be passed by one person. The benefactor is under the tree, and her breath is also covered. No wonder I can't find her. Fan Zisong jumped down without hesitation. After a short sense of weightlessness, he landed on the ground again and adapted to the dark environment inside. He immediately saw Su Li, who had walked far away in the tunnel, and he couldn't help but speed up to chase her. This is the root of the tree demon. Looking at the tunnel full of wood lines, Fan Zisong couldn't help muttering to himself. Su Li's temperament was too indifferent, and he didn't expect her to answer for him. But when he caught up with Su Li suddenly said, "This snake scholar tree was originally just an ordinary scholar tree, but it suddenly mutated into a demon. There must be something strange about it. If I'm not wrong, these hollow roots are used by the tree demons for transportation." The deeper one goes, the wider the root passage becomes. There must be something down there. After saying this, Suli quickened her pace. Fan Zisong, who was suddenly enlightened, smiled and also accelerated. His words were ruthless, but his benefactor had saved his life twice. He seemed to understand his benefactor's personality. You're just like junior sister, cold on the outside but warm on the inside, Fan Zisong thought, but he didn't connect them together. The junior sister apprentice had just started to practice, while the mysterious female practitioner was as powerful as the practitioner in Jindan realm. They couldn't be the same person. Not long after, the passage in front of them had come to an end. Suli stepped forward and punched it open without saying a word, revealing the damp underground cave. The violent impact with her thin figure had a unique charm. Fan Zisong was secretly shocked by Suli's terrifying strength, which was comparable to that of a demon beast. At this time, he suddenly smelled an extremely special pneuma. After taking a breath, he felt that his cultivation, which was stuck in the bottleneck, was slightly touched. Fan Zisong was shocked, and Suli also showed a hint of surprise in her eyes. How could it appear here? She walked quickly, and a small lake with strong white light appeared in front of her a moment later. It's really the convergent place of Nimbus. Suli showed a rare surprise on her face. Obviously, this convergent place of Nimbus had never been discovered. The pure Nimbus in it had been accumulated for many years. It was pure and rich. The practitioners who absorbed it for the first time would have great benefits, and it was even possible to improve their own spiritual root. The convergent place of Nimbus she was looking for was only the size of a wash basin, and it was controlled by a big sect. It had been used many times and had long lost its spirituality. She didn't expect that she would have such an adventure after rescuing Fan Zisong. Was this the saying that good people were rewarded with good things? Suli slightly raised the corner of her mouth, revealing a trace of evil. She was not a good person. Benefactor, what is this? Fan Zisong stared blankly at the large white lake in front of him. He, who came from a small sect, didn't recognize the origin of the lake at all. But the restless vital energy in his body told him that it was absolutely a great opportunity in front of him. It's not good for you to know more about the convergent place of Nimbus. Suli collected her thoughts and turned around to say, you have been stuck in the peak of Zhuji realm for many years. If you enter the lake now, it will be easy for you to break through to Jindan realm, and it is even possible to improve your spiritual root. I will protect you. Hurry up. Fan Zisong's face changed slightly, and he waved his hand repeatedly, Benefactor, you can't. This is your opportunity. How can I occupy it? I already owe you too much. I can't. Ho! Suli interrupted him with a sneer and said disdainfully, Fan Zisong, do you think you have the ability to suck up this lake? With your aptitude, you should be thankful that you can absorb a part of the lake. I can still afford to lose the convergent water of Nimbus. Fan Zisong took a deep breath, and his face changed. On one hand, he was shocked by the preciousness of the convergent place of Nimbus, and on the other hand, he felt a deep toothache for Suli's merciless words. He finally understood why his benefactor was always alone. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to endure this kind of teeth. After breaking through to Jindan realm, you can directly crush the token and leave the secret realm. I don't want this place to be exposed. As for the exploration time you lost, I will compensate you when I get out. Suli pointed to the lake, and her voice was always indifferent, now, go down and break through. Fan Zisong smiled bitterly, walked into the lake, sat down, and began to break through. Even if Suli didn't say it, he wouldn't stay here. It was better to go out and consolidate his cultivation than to continue exploring. As for the compensation, Suli said, he didn't want it. The opportunity to practice in the convergent place of Nimbus was definitely the biggest gain in the secret realm of shattered spirits. He was satisfied with it. Seeing Fan Zisong meditating, Suli also sat cross-legged on the shore to practice. Although she didn't meditate, the speed of practice was many times faster than in the outside world. After a day and a night, Su Li's pubic region of the 8th hurdle of Lianqi realm was filled. She stopped practicing and looked at Fan Zisong, who was sitting quietly in the lake. At this moment, his pneuma had been renewed, revealing a sense of ethereal. Finally, he broke through. Su Li rolled her eyes and calculated. The lake water in the lake didn't decrease, and the spirituality was also 99%. Even if only a trace of spirituality was absorbed, Fan Zisong's spiritual root should be improved. Not long after, Fan Zisong's pneuma returned to his pores, and he opened his eyes, clenching his fists with excitement. After being stuck in the bottleneck for 300 years, he finally broke through to Jindan realm. My spiritual root seems to have some changes. He couldn't wait to take out a small testing stone and drop a drop of blood on it. The testing stone of Huajian sect was of extremely poor quality. If a practitioner entered Lianqi realm, it couldn't test his spiritual root. The testing stone in Fan Zisong's hand was obviously a good auxiliary magic treasure, which he got from the jade token space. A testing stone of spiritual grade. It seems that my senior fellow apprentice has some opportunities. With the wealth of Huajian sect, it is impossible to have such a level of magic treasure. Su Li knew the origin of the testing stone at a glance, and her eyes moved slightly. She hadn't really tested her spiritual root since her rebirth. Don't think about it. Your talent can't be tested by this small stone. If you have this testing stone, a drop of blood on it will definitely make the stone explode. Black Lotus's lazy voice suddenly appeared, and Su Li's eyes darkened. Are you spying on my thoughts? How is it possible? I have recognized you as my master, and I can't spy on your thoughts at all. Besides, with your expression just now, why do I need to spy on you? Black Lotus replied angrily, and seemed to be a little angry at Su Li's suspicion. Su Li was silent for a moment, and transmitted the sound, I am too sensitive. Black Lotus was speechless for a moment, surprised by Su Li's apology, and even a little flustered, wondering if this was Su Li's new trick. He had been used to Su Li's unreasonable behavior, and he couldn't stand this sudden trick. While the two were communicating by transmitting the sound, Fan Zisong had come out of the lake, steamed his clothes, and bowed deeply to Su Li. Benefactor, I can't repay your gift. If you need anything in the future, please send me a message, and I'll be at your service. In just a few days, his life had undergone earth-shaking changes under the leadership of Su Li. Not only did his cultivation break through to Jindan realm, but also his spiritual root was upgraded from the middle grade to the upper grade. He didn't even dare to think about these opportunities before he met Su Li, but now they all came true. Hearing Fan Zisong's words, Su Li showed an evil smile, and her voice suddenly became gentle. If I ask you to kill innocent people and betray the orthodoxy, would you like to do it? Fan Zisong was stunned, and couldn't speak for a moment. You can go out. Su Li turned her back, and her voice became indifferent. Fan Zisong realized it and smiled bitterly. His benefactor refused him in a disguised way, but with the previous words, he didn't dare to ask for other requirements. He could only bow deeply again and crush the token. Whoosh! A whirlpool appeared without warning, sucking him in and disappearing. Phew! Taking a breath, Su Li's indifference disappeared, and she became relaxed again. She stepped into the lake and sat down, with a trace of expectation in her eyes. Then she slowly closed her eyes. Let me see how much I can improve in just over a month. At this moment, outside the gate of the secret realm of shattered spirits, many practitioners who had been eliminated sat aside with gloomy faces. They were either unlucky to encounter strong enemies and had no choice but to crush their jade tokens, or their jade tokens were forcibly transmitted out because of carelessness. Practitioners like the 3 people of Huajian sect, who died before they could crush their jade tokens, were absolutely unlucky. At this time, the gate of the secret realm suddenly fluctuated, and a small whirlpool appeared. Chapter 369. Everyone looked at it at the same time, with a hint of schadenfreude in their eyes. They had no hope, and naturally hoped that more unlucky people would suffer. Whoosh! The whirlpool disappeared, and a figure appeared. Then a momentum belonging to Jindan realm broke out. Everyone's face suddenly changed, and the gloating expression immediately turned into deep awe and envy. He broke through. This person broke through Jindan realm. He's really lucky. No wonder he came out in advance. Exploration is not suitable for him. The most important thing is to consolidate his cultivation. Jindan realm is already at the level of Mount Head in a small sect. Once he breaks through, he will reach the sky in a single bound. High position and power. What else does he need to take risks? I'm so envious. When can I break through? Fan Zisong restrained his momentum, which was temporarily out of control because of the transmission. He looked back at the calm whirlpool of the secret realm. Although there was joy in his eyes, there was also a touch of bitterness. From the beginning to the end, I didn't even know her name. 3 days later, in the crypt of the giant tree, the white lake had shrunk by 1/5, and the spirituality had also disappeared by 1/5. Su Li sat in the middle of the lake, clenched her fists, and felt the turbulent spiritual power in her body. Her eyes were bright. The peak of the 12th hurdle of Lianqi realm, here I am. In just 3 days, her spiritual power broke through to the peak of the 12th hurdle under the infusion of the place of Nimbus, like riding a rocket, without any hindrance. One more step forward, and it would be the first time to go on the Chuangxing path. The level of Lianqi realm in ancient times consumed much more Nimbus than I expected. Every time I broke through a level, the Nimbus needed had to be re-estimated. Su Li breathed a sigh of relief, and there was a touch of relief in her eyes. If she really went to the place of Nimbus in her memory, she might not even reach the 12th hurdle of Lianqi realm. Su Li's eyes sparkled as she cupped a handful of lake water. The water of Nimbus is thicker as it goes down, and its color is almost milky white. Although 1/5 of it was absorbed by me, it actually didn't consume much. Black Lotus. Black Lotus ring appeared on her ring finger. As it rotated slowly, Black Lotus's exclamation came, the best place of Nimbus. Little Su Li, the spiritual power in your body has been raised to the limit. Is it? Chuangxing path. Su Li's eyes flashed with decisiveness. If she really went to the outside world to explore the star path, she didn't know how long it would take her to finish the 12th hurdle to the 18th hurdle of Lianqi realm. Black Lotus Ring was silent for a moment and said, "Have you really decided?" He had made it very clear to Su Li that the Chuangxing path was extremely difficult, especially for a genius like Su Li. The difficulty of the Chuangxing path was several levels higher. If she rushed, she was likely to die. I don't have so much time to wait. Su Li took a deep breath. She wanted to know the truth about the reincarnation mirror. Also, she wanted to know whether those two people lived well. I won't stop you. Be careful. Black Lotus's voice became serious and less carefree. Remember what I said. The hardest thing to pass on the star path is the mental trial. If you get lost in it, no one can save you. Su Li responded and took a deep breath to calm her mind. Then she condensed a touch of spiritual power on her fingertips and slowly sketched in the nothingness. Soon, the outline of a portal was sketched out by Su Li. As the complex imprints were integrated into it, the portal gradually became solid from illusion. When Su Li drew the last stroke, the entire space of the secret realm of shattered spirits shook, as if something had woken up. However, this change was obviously not perceived by practitioners in Zhuji realm who were exploring in the secret realm. Even Bei Xiaoyang only felt a slight chill on his back, and soon he couldn't feel anything. At the same time, in the crypt, a portal emitting a faint starlight appeared, as if it was real. Su Li stood up with a dignified look and looked at the constantly twisting starry sky in the portal. She could vaguely see a path like a stone path extending from the doorsill to the end. The gate of the star path. Black Lotus made a complicated sigh and soon fell silent. Now he couldn't destroy Su Li's concentration. The ancient cultivation school, Su Li's eyes flashed without fear. She stepped into it and disappeared. The wonderful touch passed through her whole body. The scene in front of Suli changed, and her sight was immediately occupied by the bright and gorgeous starry sky. She couldn't help but feel amazed. It feels so real. Is it possible that, somewhere in the world, someone can really leave the mainland and enter the starry sky? It's not the time to think about this. Suli quickly gathered her thoughts and gently stepped on the first white stone step. In an instant, her face changed slightly, and her light body immediately carried a heavy pressure. What a terrible pressure! If I hadn't been refined by the starlight guided by the reincarnation mirror in addition to the secret records of Black Lotus, I would have been pressed to the ground at the first step. Nowadays, practitioners in the cultivation circle, even those in Jindan realm, would be directly pressed into meat sauce. Suli tightened her mind. At the 12th hurdle of Lianqi realm, she was more powerful than those in Jindan realm in her previous life. But she still felt pressure at the first pass of Chuangxing path, which showed how difficult it was. It's more than a month. I don't have much time. If I wait until the secret realm of shattered spirits is completely closed, I don't know what will happen. There was no turning back. After Suli reluctantly adapted to it, she quickly stepped into the second step. Suddenly, her face changed slightly, and she withdrew her step that was about to touch the second step. This is the refinement of starlight. Suli's face flashed with a hint of surprise. The constant numbness coming from under her feet was very similar to the scene when the reincarnation mirror refined her, but the power coming from under her feet was much stronger than that of the reincarnation mirror. Glancing at the Black Lotus ring and the reincarnation mirror that had completely lost contact, Suli was silent. She knew that it was definitely not the doing of the reincarnation mirror. Is this the gift of Chuangxing path? Suli frowned. Black Lotus said that the gift of Chuangxing path could only appear from the 5th step. Why did it appear on my first step? Without figuring out the reason, Suli didn't dwell on it anymore. She directly sat down and tried to guide the power of refinement to travel all over her body. The gift of Chuangxing path appeared on the first step. It was very likely that her Chuangxing path was more dangerous than the one Black Lotus saw. Only by getting the greatest improvement on each step could she have a little confidence. As for time, she couldn't care about it now. If she was trapped in the secret realm of shattered spirits for 100 years, she would accept it. After a long time, Suli, who was sitting on the first stone step, finally opened her eyes. With a decisive look, she took the second step. Boom! Completely different from the first stone step, the second stone step emitted an extremely huge repulsive force, which almost directly lifted Suli away. Suli snorted coldly, clenched her teeth and increased her strength. Her right foot hanging in the air finally fell slowly and touched the stone step. At the moment when it touched the stone step, all the repulsive force disappeared immediately. Suli then put her other foot on the stone step, and there was no other abnormality. She immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Past the second step. Suli murmured to herself. Her face was slightly pale, and there was a strong lingering fear in her eyes. If she didn't find the gift of the first stone step and directly stepped on the second step, she would definitely be directly blown off the stone step and lost in the endless starry sky. With the experience, Suli was not anxious this time, and directly sat down with her legs crossed. As expected, it didn't take long for a gentle force to come from the next stone step, constantly nourishing Suli's awareness. The power of her soul was rapidly improved at a speed visible to the naked eye. The second stone step actually works on the soul. Suli couldn't hide the surprise in her eyes. In the cultivation circle, the power of the soul was inborn. There was no way to improve it unless one reached the Huashan realm. The power of the soul was related to the power of understanding. The stronger a person's power of the soul was, the easier it was to deduce. The same secret method in front of people with different power of the soul would definitely be comprehended first by the person with stronger power of the soul, regardless of cultivation. After absorbing this gift, won't my innate talent become even stronger? Then the difficulty of the next step of Chuangxing path. Suli pursed her lips tightly, and her face was full of caution. She concentrated on refining the power of the soul. After an inestimable time, Suli finally got up again and stepped on the third step without hesitation. But nothing happened this time. Suli was surprised for a moment, and the picture in front of her suddenly distorted. The starry sky disappeared, and was replaced by a mountain pavilion like a fairyland. Holy girl Su, have you decided? Since you don't want to open the reincarnation mirror, I will give you a second way. As long as you are willing to leave with me and betray Yushu sect, you can save all the people in Yushu sect, including your master. Outside the pavilion stood a large number of practitioners in black robes with unfathomable numas. The leading old man looked cold and arrogant, and his tone was calm, as if he was sure of victory. Suli glanced at the white gauze she wore, and then at the complete reincarnation mirror that she put on the table. Her expression was extremely indifferent. Is this the test of mind that Black Lotus mentioned? She didn't lose her mind at all. A long time ago, such a group of people did come to Yushu sect and asked her to make a choice. Maybe for her, this might be a difficult choice, but now, reincarnation mirror, humph. She grasped the reincarnation mirror with her palm and exerted force. Crack. The whole illusion was broken together with the reincarnation mirror, and the picture was restored to the stairs of Chuangxing Path. The third step is not difficult for me at all. Suli pondered and said nothing. Was it because of her state of mind, or because it was easier to distinguish the true from the false when her soul was strong? She suppressed an idea in her mind. She would ask Black Lotus when she went out, and maybe she would get the answer. Sitting cross-legged, Suli waited quietly. If nothing unexpected happened, there would also be a gift of Chuangxing Path this time. Sure enough, after a while, the feeling of numbness came again. The gift of the third stone step was the same as the first step, which was the refinement of star power. After a long time, Suli sat on the 26th stone step and was silent. Chapter 370. Under the gloomy and lonely starry sky, time seemed to have no meaning. Suli frowned tightly, and a touch of irritation flashed through her eyes. She had been stuck here for too long. Every minute and every second became extremely long for her. Besides the dangers of the first 3 tests, the following 23 tests seemed to her like a fortuitous encounter that was delivered to her, and all of them were within her acceptable range. The 27th level was obviously a difficult one. Black Lotus clearly said that the first Chuangxing Path has 18 levels at most, in line with the extreme number of 9. But I have reached the 26th step. Why doesn't it end? In the extreme number of 9, the 27th step is likely to be the last step. But why does it end when I reach the 26th step? She had too many questions in her mind, but no one could answer them for her. After several tests, she had confirmed that there was indeed no point of strength in the space in front of her. How could she solve the problem? Looking at the distant dim stars that seemed to be within reach, the boundless darkness almost completely swallowed up the stone steps. Under such a despairing vision, even a cultivator with a strong state of mind would definitely go crazy if he stayed for a long time. Taking a deep breath, Suli forced herself to calm down and suppress the feeling of irritation in her heart. At this time, she couldn't lose her mind. Otherwise, she was likely to be completely lost in this starry sky, as Black Lotus said. What's wrong? Suli thought carefully. Starting from the first stone step, 3 steps formed a cycle, testing the physical body, strength, and state of mind respectively. Perhaps there were some tests of wisdom path, but she passed all of them without any danger. After repeating this for 8 times, her physical body and divine soul were almost enhanced to a certain limit. From the 25th step onwards, the gifts of the star path completely overflowed, and she couldn't improve at all. This shouldn't be the case. If Chuangxing Path only had such a monotonous test, it was not enough to become the most terrible cultivation school in the ancient cultivation era. She must have overlooked something. After pondering for a moment, Suli suddenly narrowed her eyes and couldn't help but have a terrible idea. Yes, a monotonous cycle. If she couldn't end Chuangxing Path, it proved that she was in some kind of danger at the moment. What kind of trap would keep repeating? The answer was self-evident. Thinking of this, Su Li's eyes showed decisiveness. She turned around and stepped into the darkness without hesitation. Just after she took this step, the surrounding darkness immediately broke like a glass plate, revealing the original starry sky of Chuangxing Path. Double illusion, Su Li took a deep breath and looked at herself still on the third stone step. There was a deep fear in her eyes. Sure enough, passing through the 26 steps was just a facade. If she couldn't maintain her composure and figure this out, the consequences would be unimaginable. The difficulty of the third stone step is much higher than the second one. It's laughable that I was so proud of myself when I broke through the first layer. Su Li laughed at herself in her heart, and her eyes became clear again. No matter how much time she wasted, she finally passed the test. This gift from the star path. The mysterious and warm pneuma from the stone steps under her feet melted into her body and disappeared. Su Li only felt that the pneuma was of great benefit to her, but she couldn't tell what the benefit was. The mysterious star path. My realm and knowledge are too low. Su Li sighed in her heart and sat down to absorb quietly. However, not long after, the warm aura did not appear again. Logically speaking, since the third stone step was so difficult, the duration of the gift should be longer than before. But Su Li estimated that only less than 1/10 of the time of the second stone step had passed. The warm pneuma should be very precious. With this thought flashing in her mind, Su Li was about to get up. Suddenly, she saw the nothingness in front of her vibrate. After a few breaths, a mysterious ancient text appeared from the nothingness. Although she had never seen such characters, she understood the meaning at a glance. Breaking through the realm, the third person in all times. Su Li was shocked. Did the star path have its own consciousness? Otherwise, how could such a word appear? 1,200 breaths. Did it refer to the time when she passed the third level? What did the third person in all times mean? She didn't think that her talent could rank third in a long time. Black Lotus, Su Li was silent. This time, she felt that even Black Lotus might not be able to explain the strange phenomenon in front of her. Whoosh! At this moment, the ancient text flashed for a moment, and the original words disappeared. Another picture similar to a list emerged. There were only 2 lines of words on it, and the rest was blank. Su Li looked carefully, and the meaning of the 2 lines of ancient text emerged in her mind. Star Lord of Nemo, Duan Hongchen. Star Lord of Kueyu, Lin Chen. Star Lord of Kueyu. Kueyu Palace. Su Li's expression changed suddenly. Even with her state of mind of 2 lives, she couldn't help but feel shocked at this moment. She still remembered that Black Lotus once said that the holy method she practiced was stolen from Kueyu Palace. Could it be that Star Lord of Kueyu, who ranked second, was the owner of Kueyu Palace? She also knew that Duan Hongchen, who ranked first, was a more terrifying existence than the owner of Kueyu Palace. The realm of these ancient existences was beyond her imagination. She fell into a deep silence. The legendary people and things suddenly appeared in front of her, which made her feel extremely unreal. Suddenly, Su Li sensed that a trace of pneuma left her body and integrated into the list. This change suddenly made her look change. Could it be? Boom! A faint vibration came from the depths of the nothingness, and then the picture of the list rippled slightly. Sure enough, in the 3rd line, words began to appear. Qingshui Circle, Su Li. Su Li stared at the dazzling list in the nothingness. It really appeared. Compared with the 2 people in front of her, her existence was so small. Now, in this Chuangxing path, she could even appear on the same list. This feeling was indescribably wonderful. Su Li's heart was full of complex feelings. Suddenly, an extremely light laughter echoed in the starry sky and reached her ears in a flash. There is someone here. Su Li's pupils shrank, and her whole body tightened. She looked around and spread out her psychic awareness, but found no other existence. While searching hard without any results, the laughter sounded again. Interesting. The arrangement left many years ago was finally triggered by someone, and it seems that I have some fate with you. Junior, practice hard. Maybe we will meet again in the future. She couldn't tell whether the mysterious voice was male or female, and it came and went quickly. After leaving this sentence, the laughter gradually faded away and soon disappeared. Suli stared blankly at a gold-faced booklet that suddenly appeared on the steps. Was it given to her by the owner of the voice? She stretched out her hand, and the booklet fell into her hand and opened. The first line of the familiar general principles came into her eyes. It was Secret Records of Black Lotus, but it was not. She knew at a glance that this method was much more profound than Secret Records of Black Lotus. In other words, Secret Records of Black Lotus was just a simplified version of this method. She closed the booklet, and 3 marks of ancient characters flashed on the surface. Sueyu Tactics. It turns out that the original name of Secret Records of Black Lotus is Sueyu Tactics. If Black Lotus knows that the holy method he stole is a castrated version, I don't know how he will react. Suli shook her head and laughed, but her eyes were extremely bright. She vaguely guessed the origin of the owner of the voice, but this guess was too shocking. She only dared to think about it in her heart, and would not even mention it to Black Lotus. Is that kind of existence still living somewhere in the world? Putting away the booklet, Suli calmed down when the nothingness list disappeared, and found that her spirit, chi, and spirit were a little different. However, no matter who it was, after experiencing so many strange things in a short time, his state of mind would certainly be transformed, and his vision would be greatly broadened to a certain extent. If it were in the previous life, Suli would be shocked for a long time even if an old ancestor of Huashan realm appeared in front of her. But now, even a practitioner of nature's test realm could not really shake her heart. After a slight fluctuation, a mysterious gate emitting starlight appeared in front of Suli, the gate of the star path. Are there only 3 passes on my star path? Suli's eyes were slightly gloomy, and she stepped out without hesitation. Her star path must have some kind of change, and ordinary rules naturally could not bind it. Although she lost 6 gifts of the star path, she did not feel it a pity. A single Sueyu Tactics was definitely more precious than the total of the gifts of the first star path. Under the crypt, there was a sudden wave in the calm converging Nimbus Lake, and then the gate appeared. Suli walked out of it. Taking a deep breath of pure Nimbus, Suli showed a long-lost relaxed expression on her face. I finally came out. Then, boom. Her momentum soared, and she naturally broke through to the 13th hurdle of Lianqi realm without any action. The surrounding water gathered and rushed into Suli's body to replenish the empty pubic region. Little Suli, you really made it. Black Lotus Ring appeared, and his surprised voice shook Suli's awareness. See, tell me the details. You are an evildoer, and the star path must be extremely difficult. Is the 18th pass a test of mind? Suli smiled, and didn't feel irritated listening to Black Lotus's chattering voice. Instead, she felt a little familiar. Shortly after she recovered her memory, she even threatened to kill herself in order to get rid of Black Lotus. Now, only a few years had passed, and all kinds of changes really made people sigh. Without answering Black Lotus, Suli stretched out her hand, and immediately a time-measuring magic treasure flew out of the lake. The scale on it had risen to the 10th zone. Only 10 days have passed. Suli was slightly shocked. Why did she feel that she had stayed in the star path for more than 100 days? Are you dumbfounded? How can you know the magic of the star path? It's normal for the time flow to be different. In the ancient cultivation years, as long as the practitioners with some talent will encounter this situation. Our ghost clan once had a peerless talent with the body of evil ghost who reached 8 times the time flow. How about it? Isn't it awesome? Chapter 371. Black Lotus was really an old guy who had been silent for many years. He talked too much. Suli rubbed her eyebrows with a headache. Why didn't she know that Black Lotus was a chatterbox before? She forced him to appear before. Now, even if she didn't force him, he would definitely talk to her when he recovered a little. Do you want me to explain to you until the end of the secret realm of shattered spirits? She said helplessly. Black Lotus suddenly paused, and then said with a lack of confidence, I am tired. The secret realm of shattered spirits will close in a month. You practice hard. The ring on her ring finger disappeared. Suli shook her head and smiled. She sat in the pool and slowly closed her eyes. She slightly stimulated her pubic region, and the whole lake immediately set off turbulent waves, wrapping her in the spiritual water. Her momentum immediately rose at a speed visible to the naked eye. Black Lotus, who was hiding in a corner of Suli's body, couldn't help but sigh at Suli's good luck. There was no bottleneck in Lianqi realm. After reaching the 12th hurdle of Lianqi realm, one could reach Zhuji realm at any time if he wanted to. He didn't tell Suli that almost 80% of the practitioners who took the Chuanxing path in ancient times broke through as soon as they reached the 12th hurdle of Lianqi realm. Because, from the 12th hurdle, one needed to accumulate too much spiritual power. From the 13th to the 14th hurdle, the spiritual power needed was more than the sum of the previous 12 hurdles. He once met a stubborn ghost practitioner, who was obviously the favored one. When he reached the 12th hurdle of Lianqi realm, he was younger than anyone in the clan. He believed that he was the chosen one, and determined to accumulate to the 18th hurdle of Lianqi realm before breaking through to Zhuji realm. Relying on the rewards from the clan and his own luck, he spent a full 600 years, but he only managed to reach the 16th level of Qi disciple. His clansmen of the same generation had already reached the peak of foundation establishment. Compared to the golden cultivation period that he had lost, the consolidation of his foundation was really insignificant. Looking at Suli, she came to the secret realm of shattered spirits and directly encountered a convergent place of nimbus that had been accumulated for many years. Such conditions were much better than the treatment of inherited disciples in ancient times, and directly saved 500 or 600 years of practice time. A 14-year-old who reached the 12th hurdle of Lianqi realm. I'm afraid that no one has ever seen such a genius except me, right? Black Lotus clicked his tongue in wonder. His mentality had changed greatly compared to a few months ago. After all, he used to be the holy treasure of the clan, high and mighty, worshipped by the entire clan. Suli used extreme means to force him to show up. Although he recognized the reality and never held a grudge, he always felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. But now that he saw Suli's potential, the discomfort immediately disappeared. He used to think that it was a fantasy to return to the peak by relying on Suli, but now he saw a little hope. Unknowingly, half a month had passed. The convergent place of nimbus in the crypt had completely dried up, leaving only a palm-sized piece of white. Suli absorbed the last spiritual power into her body and stood up. The pneuma that was condensed to the limit stagnated for a moment, and then suddenly burst out. Boom! An incomparably powerful force filled the crypt, and cracks immediately appeared on the hard earth and rocks. The entire crypt began to shake violently. The crypt is collapsing. Suli opened her eyes, and a dazzling light flashed in her eyes. With a move of her mind, a transparent shield was set up around her body to block all the flying stones. Suli sensed the spiritual power condensed like mercury in her pubic region and meridians, and a touch of disappointment flashed in her eyes. The peak of the 17th hurdle of Lianqi realm, almost reaching the 18th hurdle. Unfortunately, with such a large convergent place of nimbus, she thought she could directly reach the 18th hurdle. Unexpectedly, she underestimated the level of ancient cultivation. This was a complete convergent place of nimbus, but she still couldn't reach the realm of Lianqi realm after absorbing it all. It was too exaggerated. Seeing that the crypt was about to collapse, Suli was about to fly away. Suddenly, she noticed that there seemed to be something in the palm-sized dazzling white puddle. Suli tried to reach out and touched a hard object. She immediately grabbed it and opened her palm. It turned out to be a broken copper coin with a very strange appearance. It was triangular in shape, and the edge was covered with complex lines. It didn't look like an object of Jojo region. She looked at it for a moment and gently stroked the surface of the copper coin with her fingertips. Suddenly, she felt a row of small and neat bumps. Are there words on it? Su Li was interested. Before she had time to take a closer look, suddenly there was a loud bang. A large piece of earth and stones fell from the top, completely covering the dry lake. Forget it. Let's go out first. Su Li could only temporarily put the copper coin into the universe ring. But as soon as the copper coin approached the universe ring, it was bounced off by a force. Can't be put into the universe ring. It's a treasure. Su Li was shocked. She immediately put away her previous casual thoughts and carefully hid the copper coin. Then, she blasted away the rocks in front of her and returned to the ground through the tree root passage. Standing firmly on the ground, Su Li waved her hand and a hurricane swept over. The broken tree root was completely flattened, and no clue could be seen. Next, I'll find a secluded place to study the copper coin and wait for the end of the secret realm of shattered spirits. Su Li's eyes flickered. In the following time, it was no longer displayed that she wanted to go to the original convergent place of Nimbus. It was better to study the origin of the copper coin. Su Li flew out of the dense forest. Not long after she headed for Jituyuan, she suddenly frowned and stopped to look at two people who were approaching from a distance. One of them was Yulin, who had a grudge against her. Bitch! Yulin's eyes flashed with excitement and resentment. She stopped in front of Su Li with a cold smile, as expected of a lone cultivator with the zodiac of a rat. Even my tracking goo can't find your traces when you hide. I was about to give up, but you just had to run into me. I can only say, you are fated to die. Junior sister apprentice, is she the female rogue practitioner who hurt and humiliated you? The handsome and tall young man beside Yulin glanced at Su Li. When he saw her skinny and unattractive figure, a touch of boredom flashed in his eyes. He said gently with a hint of concern, let me help you vent your anger. Step aside and don't get hurt. Hearing what the senior fellow apprentice said, Yulin was moved. She stood aside obediently and turned her head to stare at Su Li's face. She gnashed her teeth and said, this demon girl is very powerful. Senior fellow apprentice, be careful and don't hold back. Even if you kill her, no one will trace it to you. Junior sister apprentice, don't worry. Brother Wei, the handsome senior fellow apprentice nodded solemnly. But he was interrupted by Su Li with a faint smile, you are echoing each other. Are you from Pear Garden? Are you going to perform on the stage? The handsome senior fellow apprentice's face immediately became gloomy. He became angry out of shame, you are courting death. Swish! A flying sword shuttled between the handsome senior fellow apprentice's fingers like lightning and shot at Su Li with all its strength. Su Li squinted her eyes slightly and didn't dodge. In the eyes of Yulin and the handsome senior fellow apprentice, she seemed to be scared silly. Yulin stared at Su Li without blinking. It seemed that she could see Su Li's tragic situation in the next second. She laughed proudly, useless. Who gave you the courage to humiliate a disciple of a big sect? You can't even take one sword from my senior fellow apprentice. Go to hell. Ding! Before she finished speaking, a crisp sound of flying swords colliding suddenly came from the field. The handsome young man saw a cold face suddenly appeared in front of Su Li. He couldn't help but change his expression. He stopped and stepped back. He said in surprise, Bei Xiaoyang. It's you. A person's name was like a tree's shadow. Yulin's expression also changed dramatically. She nervously retreated to the handsome young man, senior fellow apprentice, is he Bei Xiaoyang? Seeing the handsome young man nodding slightly with a dignified expression, Yulin's face immediately became extremely ugly. Why does this person protect that bitch? Bei Xiaoyang hooked his fingers, and the flying sword automatically flew back to his hand. He bowed his head and stroked the shining sword body. He said lightly, do all the disciples of Zihan sect bully people like this to bully an unarmed and weak girl? Ha ha ha, Senior fellow apprentice, you are right. Zihan sect is full of sneaky and narrow-minded people. Senior fellow apprentice, don't let them go. Su Li followed the voice and saw Qi Chen, who carried an ancient sword on his back, walking over with a smile. Bei Shaoyang frowned, you are not a disciple of my sect for the time being. I will be soon. Qi Chen smiled cheekily, senior fellow apprentice, you have promised me. My talent is just a little worse than yours. I think the master will be very happy to see me. Bei Shaoyang slightly twitched the corner of his mouth and did not speak. In the secret realm of shattered spirits, he met Qi Chen and thought this person was good, so he wanted to introduce him to the sect. He did not expect that Qi Chen looked cold, but in fact, he was extremely thick-skinned. Bei Shaoyang, don't go too far. The handsome young man looked at the two chatting as if there was no one else, and immediately felt insulted. He was so angry that his face turned red. He growled in a low voice, how dare you slander my Zihan sect? Even the elders of your sect don't have the guts to do so. If you have the ability, don't run away. When the eldest senior fellow apprentice of my sect comes, I will definitely let you taste the consequences. Oh. Bei Shaoyang turned around with a cold smile, even Qin Xianghan doesn't dare to talk nonsense in front of me. You dare to speak like this in front of me? You have some guts. Come on. Don't let me look down on your Zihan sect. You. The handsome young man immediately stiffened. Thinking of the senior fellow apprentices who had been seriously injured by Bei Shaoyang, his back was wet. Suddenly, a burst of laughter came from not far away. Bei Shaoyang, why do you embarrass the juniors of my Zihan sect? How about I fight with you? While speaking, a figure in blue appeared in the blink of an eye and stood between the two. Seeing the familiar feminine face in front of him, Bei Shaoyang was shocked. He frowned and said in a low voice, Qin Xianghan. Why are you here? Qin Xianghan narrowed her eyes, and an undisguised killing intent flashed through her eyes. I can come here, so I naturally have my ways. Bei Shaoyang, you and I have never fought with each other. Why don't we fight here? Chapter 372. Golden Core Stage. Bei Shaoyang stared at Qin Xianghan and was silent in his heart. Could it be that he sensed Qin Xianghan's gaze before he entered the outside world? Although his strength was indeed as rumored, and he could escape unscathed from a gold core cultivator, but that was only an ordinary gold core cultivator. Qin Xianghan was the same as him. She was the little holy son of the Zihan sect, and her means were extraordinary. How could a gold core cultivator from the outside world compare to her? Junior brother, you and this fellow Taoist should find a chance to leave. If you really can't, crush the jade tablet and leave. I have my own ways to deal with this. Qi Chen should have been happy to hear him call him junior brother, but now there was only deep worry in his heart. He could see that Bei Shaoyang was just talking big to comfort them, but he was not sure. Qi Chen sighed in his heart and turned to look at Su Li. When he caught a glimpse of the latter's still cold and emotionless face, he surprisingly felt a trace of peace in his heart. Bei Shaoyang didn't know how powerful this woman was, but he had seen it with his own eyes. Although Jindan realm was far beyond the scope of Zhuji realm, he still had a glimmer of hope in his heart. Seeing that neither of them moved, Bei Shaoyang was slightly annoyed. When he was about to transmit the sound again, Qin Xianghan's laughter suddenly sounded. Ha ha ha, Bei Shaoyang, you can't even protect yourself, but you still think about the safety of others? Qin Xianghan's smile was full of deep meaning. I spent so much effort to come in. You really don't think? I'm just here to meet you, do you? As soon as these words came out, Bei Shaoyang's face suddenly changed, and Qi Chen also understood the meaning. He took out the token and crushed it without saying a word. But after waiting for a long time, no vortex appeared. Qi Chen and Bei Shaoyang's faces immediately became extremely gloomy. Qin Xianghan smiled even more when he saw this. He pointed at the air, and the flying sword was unsheathed with a bang, full of killing intent. After today, there will be no Bei Shaoyang in the cultivation world. I, Qin Xianghan, will not be anyone's stepping stone. Xiao. The flying sword flashed like an illusion, and its speed was extremely fast. It divided into 25 pieces and turned into residual shadows, stabbing at the vital parts of Bei Shaoyang. Bei Shaoyang dealt with him with all his strength and had no time to care about Qi Chen and Qi Yu. Yu Lin and the handsome young man jumped far away and looked at the sand and stones in the field calmly. Bei Shaoyang would be defeated sooner or later. At that time, it would be easy to kill Qi Chen and Su Li. There was no need to rush now. Qi Chen also retreated to the side and looked around. The terrain here was too flat. If they could enter the dense forest, they might have a chance. Your sword is not bad. Su Li's slightly indifferent voice suddenly came into his ears. Qi Chen was so shocked that his heart skipped a beat. He looked at the thin figure beside him in shock. When did she get here? He actually didn't notice it at all. Su Li looked at Bei Shaoyang, who was exhausted in the field, and said, "There is a tactical matrix for camouflage and a trapping tactical matrix here. It's unrealistic for you to go to the dense forest to deal with them." What? Qi Chen's expression changed when he heard this. He didn't believe it and rushed into the dense forest. Sure enough, he hit a barrier halfway. He attacked with all his strength but couldn't hurt it at all. What level is this tactical matrix? Qi Chen was shocked. He had never seen it. Even the tactical matrix in the dangerous place of the ancient sword's secret treasure was absolutely not as advanced as the one Qin Xianghan set. Thinking of this, Qi Chen suddenly felt shocked. He quickly returned to Su Li and asked with a little expectation, "You can recognize the tactical matrix. Do you have a way to break it?" Su Li tilted her head and her eyes fell on the ancient sword behind Qi Chen. In Qi Chen's view, the meaning was self-evident. Taking advantage of others' difficulties. Qi Chen's face became more and more ugly. He didn't expect that this woman's temperament was so cold. At this time, she not only didn't help, but also wanted to take advantage of others' difficulties. Thinking of the sound transmitted by Bei Shaoyang before, Qi Chen snorted coldly. Without saying anything, he took off the cloth bag on his back and threw it to Su Li. Su Li took the ancient sword and quickly opened it. Seeing the familiar and special lines on the ancient sword, she couldn't help but be slightly shocked. A cold light flashed in her eyes. Sure enough, it was Han Feng's sword. In the illusion of reincarnation, the cheap senior fellow apprentice Tan Taiyu once gave her a sword. Unexpectedly, after 1,000 years, this sword was not destroyed with the reincarnation mirror, but spread to Qingshui Circle. Is it possible that someone alive brought this sword out of the reincarnation mirror? If such a person was still alive, he must have a deep relationship with her. Su Li pondered for a moment and threw the ancient sword back to Qi Chen's arms. She said, "The origin of this sword is very special. You'd better recast it before using it, so as not to cause trouble." Qi Chen was stunned. After a while, he said, "You don't want it?" Su Li slightly hooked her lips and didn't answer. She said lightly, "If you can stimulate the power of this sword, Qin Xianghan will not be your opponent." Qi Chen's face darkened. If he could really use this sword, he would have gone to help. How could he stand here and worry? Since you can see the origin of this sword, you must be able to use it. He gritted his teeth and stuffed the Han Feng sword into Su Li's hands again. "Anyway, my senior fellow apprentice helped you just now. As long as you can help him out of danger, I will agree to any request you have." Su Li raised her eyebrows and threw the sword in her hand. Qi Chen felt a weight on his back, and the sword returned to the cloth bag. Then, he saw a very faint smile on the face of the woman who had been cold all the time in front of him. "That's what you said." Before she finished her words, Su Li's figure had disappeared. Qi Chen looked anxious. How could she be Qin Xianghan's opponent with bare hands without the ancient sword? But after a few breaths, the anxiety on Qi Chen's face was completely replaced by horror. He saw that Su Li suddenly flashed in front of Bei Xiaoyang, who was pale, and blasted an extremely simple punch. He didn't even feel how much power was in it. Chen Xianghan, who was still a few feet away from her, turned into a blood mist with a boom. He died just like that. Qi Chen took a breath and was so shocked that he almost broke his tongue. Bei Xiaoyang was also completely frozen. Looking at Su Li's back, he felt cold and even began to wonder if he was dreaming. How much power did it take to blast Chen Xianghan into a blood mist with one punch? If this woman turned around to deal with him, it would be a matter of one punch. Senior fellow apprentice Chen. The handsome young man looked at the blood mist floating in the sky, and his face was full of disbelief. His heart trembled violently. How could anyone kill senior fellow apprentice Chen in the secret realm of shattered spirits? It was definitely an illusion. Senior fellow apprentice, she is looking at us. Yu Lin's horrified voice sounded in his ears. The handsome young man quivered and immediately took out the jade token and crushed it. But after that, he suddenly realized something. This area has the means left by senior fellow apprentice Chen. We can't get out. The handsome young man's heart instantly sank. Su Li's face didn't change. She waved her palms from a distance. Bang! Bang! 2 more clusters of blood mist spread. It's not killing, but chopping melons and vegetables. Qi Chen's scalp was numb, and he smiled bitterly in his heart at the same time. He thought that Su Li coveted his ancient sword before. Now it seemed that with the strength of this woman, she didn't need any external objects. She could crush a practitioner in Jindan realm with her strength alone. Even in a big sect like Yushu sect, she could be an elder of Naiman branch. Su Li naturally didn't know Qi Chen's thoughts. At this moment, she stretched out her hand and the storage rings of Chen Xianghan and the other 2 fell into her hand automatically. At the same time, Bei Xiaoyang walked over with a slightly restrained expression. He bowed slightly and said respectfully, "Senior, thank you for saving my life. Don't call me senior. I'm younger than you." Su Li spoke bluntly and mercilessly. Bei Xiaoyang was suddenly embarrassed, but he didn't care very much. She was more talented than him, so it was normal for her to have an eccentric temper. At this time, Qi Chen came over with a hollow laugh and said, "I'm really sorry. I misunderstood you just now. It doesn't matter. Don't forget your promise." After checking the things in the storage rings, Su Li was slightly satisfied and responded casually. Qi Chen couldn't help but feel anxious. What couldn't such a powerful female practitioner do? Why did she need his help? Su Li didn't say anything else, and he didn't dare to ask. Bei Xiaoyang, who was sure that Su Li had an eccentric temper, didn't dare to interrupt at will. The scene suddenly became cold. Su Li didn't care about the weird atmosphere. She closed her eyes and sensed carefully. Then she stamped her feet, and immediately a wonderful wave came out with her as the center. Bei Xiaoyang felt the wave and was confused. He couldn't understand what Su Li was doing. Qi Chen didn't feel anything. He was even more confused than Bei Xiaoyang. Su Li waited patiently. Then, not long after, a small bulge suddenly appeared on the flat ground. Found it. Her eyes brightened, and she immediately flashed to the bulge and dug the soil. Bei Xiaoyang followed and immediately saw a palm-sized quaint compass hidden inside. Matrix plate. Is this the tactical matrix for deception that Qi Chen mentioned? He recognized it and quickly associated it with Qi Chen's secretly transmitted sound before. He immediately guessed that this thing was obviously a rare treasure. But he didn't think about it, and he didn't dare to think about it. This mysterious female practitioner was not only powerful, but her means were also very strange and unpredictable. She was definitely a powerful character who couldn't be provoked. After Chen Xianghan's death, the compass was already ownerless. Su Li dripped a drop of blood on it and quickly integrated it into the compass. After completing the master recognition, she put it away and studied it carefully after going out. After doing this, Su Li looked up at Bei Xiaoyang and Qi Chen and said lightly, "You too, follow me." Bei Xiaoyang and Qi Chen looked at each other and saw a trace of a bitter smile in each other's eyes. Then they followed together. 4 days later, the three of them came to a valley with beautiful scenery. The concentration of spiritual power was several times higher than other areas of the secret realm of shattered spirits. Is there such a blessed place in the secret realm of shattered spirits? Bei Xiaoyang was amazed. He had entered the secret realm of shattered spirits several times, but he had never been to this area. Thinking of the tactical matrix for deception, he suddenly had a guess in his heart. This area was likely to be hidden by the tactical matrix set by this woman, and no one under Jindan realm could find it. The valley was very small. It didn't take Su Li and the other two a moment to reach the end. Under the cover of dense trees, they could vaguely see some traces of building houses. Chapter 373. Su Li looked at the ruins of her former cabin, and a complex understanding rose in her heart. Perhaps only the Star Lord, who appeared in the Chuangxing path, could obtain the real eternity. It was still too early to think about this. Su Li shook her head to dispel the distracting thoughts. She waved her hand and swept away the traces of the cabin. Immediately, a wash-basin-sized white pool appeared. After 1,000 years of nourishment and recovery, this white pool seemed to be bigger than she remembered. However, for her who had reached the 17th hurdle of Lianqi realm, it was not very useful. "This is the convergent place of Nimbus?" Bei Xiaoyang exclaimed and was shocked. The secret realm of shattered spirits was extremely famous in the Jiuzhou region because of the convergent place of Nimbus. There were tens of thousands of practitioners who entered the secret realm of shattered spirits, but only a few could really encounter the convergent place of Nimbus. The woman in front of him actually knew the existence of the convergent place of Nimbus and brought them here. "Senior," in a daze, Bei Xiaoyang called him senior again. Su Li didn't correct him this time. She waved her hand and swept away the dust around. Then she took out 3 futons and threw them in front of the white pool. "Sit down." Bei Xiaoyang and Qi Chen didn't dare to hesitate and sat down quickly. Su Li sat in front of them and was silent for a moment. Then she said, "Which branch of disciple are you?" Bei Xiaoyang was stunned for a moment. Qi Chen was a casual practitioner, so Su Li could only ask him. Without hesitation, he immediately bowed his head and said, "I am the first disciple of Elder Mo Qin of Yundan Mount, Bei Xiaoyang." Yundan Mount, Elder Mo Qin. Su Li's body shook slightly, and the calmness on her face completely froze. "Li, after I break through Jindan realm, I can also form my own sect on Yundan Mount. You will be the first disciple of Mo Qin. How about that?" "Li, leave quickly. Don't worry about me. Only when you leave Yushu's sect, I can be at ease." "Li, why do you? Remember, come back alive." "Master," Su Li murmured in her heart with mixed feelings. She closed her eyes, and the past flowed through her memory. After her rebirth, her state of mind had changed dramatically. She became selfish, scheming, and had no bottom line. She was no longer the naive holy girl Su who could sacrifice herself for the sect. However, no matter what she had become, as long as she thought of her teacher, Mo Qin, her heart would be soft. In her previous life, no matter how the world changed, that woman always stood on her side. After she recognized Mo Qin as the owner of Reincarnation Mirror, her first reaction was to let her leave Yushu's sect, regardless of her own situation. After thousands of years, this memory did not fade away. Instead, it became firmer with the passage of time. In Su Li's heart, Mo Qin was not only her master but also a relative. After a long time, Su Li opened her eyes. Her eyes were still indifferent, but there was a trace of imperceptible softness in her eyes. "After my death, Master will be alone. She should accept a disciple as a companion. Bei Xiaoyang has a good temperament. After today, there is Qi Chen. Even without me around, she felt bitter in her heart. For the master, she only had a deep guilt in her heart. Although she was reborn now, she knew that there were 3 people in Huashan realm in Yushu sect. The body of evil ghost was definitely a dangerous place. How could she dare to show up? This guilt would last for a long time. There are 7 days before the end of the secret realm of shattered spirits. Su Li's eyes were shining, and she suddenly said, "There is not much time. If you don't understand anything in your practice, you can ask me." She used to be the holy girl of Yushu sect. If she didn't want to accumulate enough foundation, she would have broken through to Yuanying realm. Now, with the special experience of reincarnation mirror, she was more than enough to guide 2 people in Zhuji realm. Bei Shaoyang and Qi Chen were surprised. Su Li's sudden change in attitude caught them off guard. Seeing that they were silent, Su Li frowned. Bei Shaoyang suddenly came to his sense and said slowly, "Senior, I practice Yushu tactics, but I can't practice it to the perfect realm. There is a flaw in it, so I dare not break through rashly. Master can't see the problem. For this reason, I have stayed in the peak of Zhuji realm for 300 years. Senior, do you have any way?" Bei Shaoyang said helplessly. Although the master treated him very well, she was not good at fighting. She was an alchemist of Yundan Mount and didn't practice Yushu tactics to the perfect realm. He had no guidance and could only explore by himself. Naturally, he felt extremely difficult. Su Li pondered for a moment and said, "Show me the mental method and let me see." Bei Shaoyang immediately ran the mental method to show the route, but he didn't have much hope for Su Li's answer. After all, Yushu tactics was a secret of Yushu sect. Even if he showed it without reservation, it was impossible to understand and improve his practice method in just 7 days. After a while, Bei Shaoyang ran the complete Yushu tactics. When he was about to run it from the beginning for the 2nd time, Su Li stopped him and said, "Okay, that's enough." "Enough?" Bei Shaoyang was shocked. Before he asked, he saw Su Li began to draw in the nothingness. In the blink of an eye, she drew the complete running route of Yushu sect. Maybe you are used to it. When running these 3 meridians, there was a pause for half a breath. Su Li said slowly. After she practiced this mental method to the perfect realm, she had studied it for decades and even improved it. Of course, she was very familiar with it. Bei Shaoyang was surprised and doubtful. He tried to run it and observed deliberately. As expected, he found a pause, and he couldn't help but be more shocked. She saw it only once, but she really saw the problem. Maybe he could really solve his troubles with this and solve the problem once and for all. Thinking of this, his eyes lit up. His absent-mindedness was swept away, and he listened attentively like a good student. Qi Chen also stared intently. He hadn't joined the sect yet, so he couldn't practice Yushu tactics. But now after listening to Su Li's explanation, it would be easier and more beneficial for him to practice in the future. What is the perfect realm? Su Li didn't care about the change of the 2 and continued, "The perfect realm is round and flawless. Every route of running Yushu tactics must be done without error, so that you can break through to the perfect realm, purify the genuine energy in your body, and make your foundation to a higher level." Bei Shaoyang was completely immersed in Su Li's explanation and was fascinated. He had never seen anyone who could explain the Jade Void tactic so thoroughly. Even the Grand Supreme Elders who had preached on altars in the past could not do so. He had a good comprehension ability. Otherwise, he would not have been able to reach the level of the little saint by exploring alone. Now, with Su Li's unreserved teaching, his understanding of Yushu tactics suddenly improved like a rocket. 1 day later, Su Li sorted out the structure of Yushu tactics. She changed the topic and began to talk about her improved Yushu tactics. Now she had several top ancient pocket-sized holy methods in her hands, and she could make a lot of improvements to Yushu tactics. So, she told Bei Shaoyang her ideas. The more Bei Shaoyang listened, the more shocked he was. In the end, he directly took out the jade slip and nervously recorded what Su Li said, for fear of missing anything. 3 days later, Su Li made the last suggestion. The light in her eyes disappeared, and she said lightly, the secret realm of shattered spirits will be closed in 3 days. Bei Xiaoyang, since you have memorized all I said, you don't have to rush to try. Why don't you take advantage of the convergent place of Nimbus to break through to Jindan realm? Many of the ideas I said can only be tried by people in Jindan realm. You should understand that sharpening the axe will not delay the work of cutting firewood. Yes, senior. Bei Xiaoyang responded solemnly, and his expression was full of respect. The meaning of this respect was different from before. It was a kind of reverence for the elder, rather than fear. Su Li helped him so much that she was like a second master to him. If he didn't already have a master, he would definitely beg Su Li to accept him as a disciple. Even if Su Li once said that she was younger than him, it was not an obstacle. In the cultivation circle, the more powerful ones were the masters. Qi Chen, you also practice together. You can digest the many feelings after you go out. There is still a long way for you to reach the peak of Zhuji realm. Relying on the convergent place of Nimbus, you can break through in 3 days. Su Li looked solemn, just like a teacher. Qi Chen also stood up respectfully and bowed deeply. Then he sat on the opposite side of the white pool and settled down. The last 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Bei Xiaoyang's talent was better than Su Li's imagination. On the second day, the pneuma of Jindan realm burst out from his body and he successfully stepped into Jindan realm. After consolidating the realm, Bei Xiaoyang stopped practicing and stood up. He couldn't hide the excitement in his eyes. He looked up and saw Su Li sitting not far away to protect them. His heart was filled with deep gratitude. Another day later, Qi Chen woke up with a shock. His momentum kept rising and then stagnated for a moment, as if he had broken through a thin film. His pneuma became mellow and restrained. The peak of Zhuji realm. Qi Chen sighed in his heart. He had just broken through the late stage of Zhuji realm less than 3 years ago. He didn't expect that he could step into the peak of Zhuji realm so soon without any damage to his foundation. The convergent place of Nimbus is really an extraordinary place for cultivation. Gathering his mind, Qi Chen stood up and walked to Bei Xiaoyang's side, looking at Su Li's back with admiration. Both he and Bei Xiaoyang understood that they could have such a great opportunity in the secret realm of shattered spirits because of the reward from this mysterious female practitioner. Buzz! Suddenly, there was a fluctuation in the space, and a repulsive force appeared around. 3 months had passed. Bei Xiaoyang, who was still hesitating, immediately asked anxiously, "Senior, I can't repay your kindness. Please tell me your name, and I will remember it." "You don't need to know my name. You will know it in the future." Su Li's figure disappeared, and her chuckle echoed in the nothingness. At the same time, at the entrance of the secret realm of shattered spirits, the calm ring fluctuated violently, and countless figures were repelled out. Su Li didn't look at anything else after she came out, and directly flew to the spiritual boat to return to Huajian sect. Just at the moment when she landed on the spiritual boat, the ring of the secret realm fluctuated again, and Bei Xiaoyang and Qi Chen appeared. A pneuma of Jindan realm diffused, and the noise in the whole scene immediately stopped, and then burst into a more enthusiastic uproar. That is Bei Xiaoyang. Bei Xiaoyang has broken through to Jindan realm. Hiss. In this way, he is the real holy son of Yushu's sect. When the surviving disciples of Yushu's sect saw Bei Xiaoyang, whose pneuma was more unfathomable, they were all excited and surrounded Bei Xiaoyang. First senior fellow apprentice has broken through. First senior fellow apprentice is really a genius. Our Yundan Mount is going to be rich. Bei Xiaoyang, who was in the center of the public opinion, scanned the whole scene with his divine awareness, but didn't find Su Li. He couldn't help but feel regretful. Chapter 374. In the spiritual boat, the tall elder of Leiyu's sect looked at the people who came back, and looked a little surprised. Although there was a token to protect one's life in the secret realm of shattered spirits, in many dangerous situations, one would die before he could use the token. For disciples of small sects like Huajian sect who entered the secret realm, the death rate was extremely high, and less than 1 out of 10 people could come back alive. But this year, out of the 20 people who went in, there were actually 3. No, it was 4 people. Looking at the spirit boat of Yushu sect, First Elder Gao sighed with emotion in his eyes. He also got the news that Qi Chen was chosen by Bei Shaoyang to join Yushu sect and became a disciple of the first sect in Jiuzhou region from a casual practitioner. He had a promising future. Forget it. This kind of opportunity is not something that can be obtained easily. My cultivation is almost at a standstill. There is no point in thinking too much about it. With a sigh, the tall elder's eyes returned to the spiritual boat. He looked at Fan Zisong and changed his indifferent expression. He said with a smile, "Fellow practitioner Fan, since you have broken through, you and I can be friends of the same generation. My surname is Mo, and my first name is Su. Huajian sect is too shallow. Have you ever thought of changing to another sect?" Jindan realm was the mainstay in Jiuzhou region. Every one of them was a resource worth fighting for. Mo Su, the tall elder, naturally wanted to have a try. If he could recruit Fan Zisong, he could also get a lot of rewards. Fan Zisong hesitated when he heard the words. Since he recognized Wang Yu's true colors, he had little sense of belonging to Danxia Mount. He had fulfilled his promise by entering the secret realm of shattered spirits at the risk of his life. If the mysterious female practitioner hadn't saved him, he would have died long ago. So, he didn't owe Wang Yu anything, and he could totally leave Huajian sect to find a better way out. But, he still had 2 things he was worried about. Elder, if I enter the Leiyu sect, can I bring along 2 junior sisters who have just stepped onto the path of cultivation? Su Li, who was standing on the side, heard it and raised her eyebrows. Elder Mo Su was startled at first, then he was overjoyed and said, "Of course you can. If fellow Taoist Fan is willing to join my sect, let alone 2, even 10 wouldn't be a problem. Your 2 junior sisters can definitely join your faction and become inner disciples, cultivating in peace." Obviously, Fan Zisong didn't realize the status of Jindan realm. Hearing Elder Mo Su's words, he was relieved, but there was no joy on his face. He had to ask for the opinions of his junior sister apprentices, and Wang Yu was not so easy to pass. After thinking for a moment, Fan Zisong raised his head and said seriously, "Thank you for the olive branch, Elder Mo, but I can't give you a specific answer for the time being. How about contacting you after I return to Huajian sect and deal with the things at hand?" "That's good. This is my message talisman." Mo Su handed over his token and said respectfully, "Our Thunder Imperial sect welcomes young elites like fellow Fan to join us. If fellow Fan comes to our sect, you will definitely not be disappointed." Fan Zisong reluctantly responded with a few words. Mo Su was old and shrewd. He saw that Fan Zisong was absent-minded, so he didn't continue to disturb him. Mo Su turned to Su Li and slightly restrained his smile. "Junior, I told you before that you want to join our sect. What do you think about it?" Su Li shook her head and said nothing. Obviously, she refused. "Well, it's a pity." Mo Su didn't insist. Anyway, Leiyuan sect was a top-grade sect among the 25 sects, and it wouldn't beg a practitioner in Zhuji realm to join it. Since Su Li was unwilling, he wouldn't say more. The last one was the first disciple of Yuling sect. He also refused Mo Su and said respectfully, "Elder, please forgive me. I have been apprenticed to Immortal Bingshu." Mo Su nodded. Since he was apprenticed to the headmaster, he naturally couldn't leave the sect. Besides, he had also heard of Immortal Bingshu's means. Unless it was a last resort, it was better not to offend such a strange and ruthless person. Then, the spiritual boat fell into silence. Except for Fan Zisong, no one was in the mood to talk. Fan Zisong was not far from Su Li. He transmitted the sound several times without any response. He wanted to stand up and approach her, but he was stopped by Su Li's indifferent eyes. It seems that you don't want to expose your identity. Fan Zisang sighed secretly and finally gave up the idea of communicating with Su Li on the spiritual boat. The power of the snake locust tree in the secret realm of shattered spirits was still vivid in his mind. After he broke through to Jindan realm, he could feel the power of that monster more vividly. Not to mention that he had just broken through, even Elder Mo Su couldn't survive the means of the snake locust tree, but the senior could easily kill it. A powerful casual practitioner in Yuanying realm. Fan Zisang guessed in his heart. Thinking of Mo Su's arrogant solicitation of the senior, he couldn't help but laugh secretly. With the strength of the senior, he could be the grand elder of Lei Yu sect. How could he be interested in the position of a disciple? Seeing that Fan Zisang finally didn't take any action, Su Li slowly closed her eyes and sank her mind into the stone sea. She didn't have time to study the complete Sueyu tactics until now. As for the strange copper coin, it was obviously not suitable to pry into its mystery on the current occasion. She could only think about it after returning to Huajian sect. In the long life of cultivation, 3 or 5 days were just a short moment. Before Su Li finished sorting out the Sueyu tactics, they arrived at Wuyang City. After stopping the spiritual boat, Mo Su and Fan Zisang talked briefly for a moment and left directly. You too, I'll go back to the sect first. The young man of Yuling sect said faintly and glanced at Fan Zisang. There was not much fear on his face. He gave a fist and palm salute and turned to leave. From beginning to end, like Su Li, he did not reveal his name. Seeing that he left without saying a word, Fan Zisang couldn't have asked for more. He didn't notice his weird attitude. He turned his head and was about to say something respectfully, but was stopped by Su Li. Let's go somewhere else. Fan Zisang immediately reacted and smiled awkwardly. There were too many people here, and it was really not a place to talk freely. A moment later, in the private room upstairs of Wuyang Inn, Fan Zisang got up and poured a glass of wine for Su Li. With gratitude on his face, he said in a deep voice, Senior, I can't repay your great kindness. I propose a toast to you first. As he said, he raised his head and drank up the wine. Su Li felt a little helpless. If she hadn't had a few words to say, she would have left long ago. The atmosphere was stagnant for a moment. She picked up the wine glass and took a sip as a response. Fan Zisang finally breathed a sigh of relief. Now he was facing a person who was more powerful than the Lord of Huajian sect, so he naturally felt pressure. Fortunately, this senior seemed to have a good influence on him, and they had some relationship, but even he didn't know where this relationship came from. Just when Fan Zisang wanted to ask, Su Li put down the wine glass and said lightly, when you go back to the sect, you will be excluded by Wang Yu, and your reputation will be damaged. But as a cultivator, we don't need to worry about others' opinions. The innocent will know. You have a clear conscience. Senior, you are right. Fan Zisang's eyes flickered with gratitude. He could imagine that if he left Danxia Mount, he would definitely be portrayed as an ungrateful person by Wang Yu. The feeling of being misunderstood by everyone and the despair of being helpless and isolated made him shudder with fear and anxiety. But after hearing Su Li's words, he immediately became extremely calm. Even if the entire Huajian sect regarded him as a traitor, so what? It was enough for the senior to understand him. At this time, Su Li said again, it is unlikely that you want to bring your 2 junior sisters into Lei Yu's sect, but you don't have to worry. I will arrange it. You can go to Lei Yu's sect to practice with peace of mind. Fan Zisang was pleasantly surprised. Are you serious? Su Li glanced at him calmly. Is it necessary for me to lie to you? Fan Zisang suddenly shivered and said that he didn't dare to. Okay, go back, and don't tell anyone about my existence. As soon as she finished speaking, Su Li's figure disappeared out of thin air. With Fan Zisang's cultivation, he couldn't see how she disappeared, and he couldn't help but be in awe of her. At the same time, he had more doubts. Senior, you seem to be in Huajian sect, but there is no old ancestor of Yuanying realm in Huajian sect. It's so strange. After Su Li disappeared from the private room, she didn't leave Wuyang in, but came to the door of the heaven-class guest room on the top floor. Lvu, who was meditating and waiting in the room, immediately sensed it. He waved his hand to open the door and came out to greet her. He said in surprise, "Master, you are back." Su Li responded, and then she threw a bottle of elixir between her fingers. Lvu quickly caught it and opened it curiously. Then he was shocked. Third-grade elixir. Third-grade elixir was a cultivation elixir corresponding to the level of Jindan realm. It was 100 times faster to practice with this elixir than to refine spiritual stones. Even in the major sects of the 25 sects, the third-grade elixir was extremely precious and priced by each elixir. But now, the master gave him a bottle of elixir. You are lucky to meet a few ignorant people in the secret realm of shattered spirits. Although this bottle of elixir is not a flawless elixir, it will have some effect on your cultivation. Su Li's indifferent tone made Lvu twitch his mouth, but he couldn't help hesitating. Master, this elixir is obviously at the level of Jindan realm. If I take it, in his impression, although the master was stronger than him, her strength was no more than the late stage of Jindan realm. You also said that it is at the level of Jindan realm. This little spiritual power is useless to me. Su Li's tone revealed a faint disgust. In front of the massive spiritual power of the 17th hurdle of Lianqi realm, she didn't even care about the 4th-grade elixir, let alone the 3rd-grade elixir. As I said before, I will naturally compensate you for taking your things. Su Li waved her hand and started to leave. Lvu suppressed the shock and speculation in his heart and hurriedly followed. 4 hours later, Su Li returned to Danxia Mount and didn't attract anyone's attention. She went all the way to the quiet room where she was before. Sensing that no one had touched the tactical matrix she had set before, Su Li was a little relieved. First, she spent a few days to carefully sort out the Suiyu tactics of Zhuji realm. Then she took out the triangular copper coin and pondered. It's strange. Why can't I sense the characters on the copper coin with my psychic awareness? I can only touch them with my hands. Treasures always had something magical. Su Li didn't struggle for too long. She used her fingertips to identify the hair-like characters on the coin, which was countless times slower than scanning with her psychic awareness. After a while, Su Li fumbled out the first character. She couldn't help but look a little surprised, because she found that the characters on the copper coin were not the common characters of the modern practitioners, but the characters left from the ancient cultivation era. Chapter 375. Soul Tactics. After figuring out the first part of the general principle, Su Li fell into silence, and her eyes flashed with surprise. The general principle had few words, but the meaning was clear. This was a secret method of the soul. As the name implied, practicing this method could strengthen the soul, and even cause harm to the enemy by means of the soul. It was unheard of. Suppressing the tumbling thoughts in her heart, Su Li took a deep breath and calmed down. Her eyes flashed. Except for the opportunity to strengthen the soul in the Chuangxing path, she had never heard of any secret method of practicing the soul in the 1,200 years of practice. After the Chuangxing path, my soul has been restored to the level of the previous life, and even exceeded it. Now I encounter the soul tactics. She pinched the small triangular copper coin and pondered. Since her rebirth, she had many adventures, and the opportunities were 100 times better than those in the previous life. Was it because of the experience in the previous life that the natural law made compensation for her? As soon as this idea appeared, it was directly extinguished by Su Li. She had forgotten her identity. The body of evil ghost was originally envied by the natural law. Even if the natural law helped those cultivators who were born with Taoist body, it would never give up its hostility to her. If that's the case, does that mean my luck has increased? Su Li was thoughtful, and suddenly thought of the mysterious pneuma given to her in the 3rd stage of the Chuangxing path. Could it be related to luck? Su Li's thought was fruitless, and her eyes were clear. Since she got the rare secret method of the soul, there was no reason not to practice it. In this way, her physical body, cultivation, and soul power could be practiced at the same time, and there was no weakness. The only obstacles that hindered her progress were time and resources. Ding, ding, the bell outside the adytum rang gently. This was the arrangement of Danxia Mount, which reminded people in the adytum that there was something outside to disturb them. Generally speaking, no one would trigger this mechanism, but this time Su Li obviously stayed in isolation for a long time. It's time to go out. The 17th hurdle of Lianqi realm is enough to solve some things. After dealing with Huajian's sect, I can continue to recover. Su Li's eyes flashed, and she got up to turn the mechanism. The moment the stone door of the adytum opened automatically, a black light immediately rushed into her arms, making a meow sound. Little Black, thinking of this nightmare beast, a smile appeared on Su Li's face. She almost forgot this little thing during the 3 months in the secret realm of shattered spirits. But the nightmare fed on dreams, so many people on Danxia Mount wouldn't starve it to death. Junior sister. Jining ran in with surprise and took Su Li's arm. She breathed a sigh of relief and said, "You have practiced in isolation for 3 months in a row. I was so worried." Hee, for cultivators, a few years of seclusion isn't considered a long time. What's a mere 3 months? Fan Zisong, who was behind Jining, walked in with gentle eyes. Junior sister apprentice works hard. Second junior sister apprentice, you should practice hard and don't fall behind too much. Got it. Jining pouted aggrievedly and didn't think much. Although she knew some details of Su Li, she didn't see Su Li leave Danxia Mount. Naturally, she didn't know that Su Li and Fan Zisong returned to Danxia Mount at the same time. After chatting for a while, Su Li and the other two sat down in the inner hall. Jining sat for a while and asked impatiently, "Senior fellow apprentice, you just came back from the secret realm today. What's the matter?" "Nothing." Fan Zisong smiled slightly and said, "There is a rule in the sect that any disciple who can come out of the secret realm of shattered spirits alive can get the opportunity to soak in the spiritual pool of the main peak for 3 days. I wrote your names." 2 little girls who had just reached Yunti realm could not absorb as much spiritual energy as one in Zhuji realm. When Fan Zisong proposed this to the elder of the main peak, he didn't encounter any obstruction and soon got a positive answer. Really? Jin Ying's eyes immediately became bright. In the past 3 months, she had heard and seen a lot of famous cultivation treasures in Huajian's sect. Among them, the one that was most praised by senior fellow apprentices was the spiritual pool of the main peak. It was said that it was built by immortal Hua Yan, the lord of Huajian's sect and her peers. It contained very gentle spiritual energy and was very easy to absorb. If one practiced in it, even a practitioner in Zhuji realm could make rapid progress. As for a disciple in Yunti realm, his physical body was likely to transform directly, and the spiritual energy would enter his body and step into Zhuji realm. After a while, Jining suddenly pouted, "No, if we go, what about you, senior fellow apprentice? This is the chance you got at the risk of life and death." We. Hearing this, Fan Zisong's eyes were more gentle. He couldn't help but touch Jin Ying's smooth hair. Then he glanced at the cold Su Li and didn't dare to touch her. He said with a smile, "Don't worry. The spiritual pool is useless to me. You are my 2 closest girls. If you don't go, I have no other candidates. It will be a waste." As he said, Fan Zisong showed a pitiful expression. Jining immediately changed her words and complained, "Don't. Senior fellow apprentice, why didn't you tell me earlier? I was worried for nothing." Fan Zisong laughed and was obviously amused by Jining. Su Li was silent on the side, but she looked more relaxed than before. Fan Zisong just came back and had a lot of things to deal with, so he left soon. Jining looked at his back and was full of gratitude. With the help of the spiritual pool, her cultivation speed would be far faster than that of the disciples in the same session. Although she couldn't compare with Suli, she could be among the best. Suli, will you go to the spiritual pool tomorrow? After feeling happy, Jining suddenly thought of something. She looked around and asked cautiously. Suli didn't say yes or no. She said in a low voice, the accumulation in the spiritual pool is really beneficial to you. But remember, you can't break through to Zhuji realm. Otherwise, you will ruin your cultivation and stop at Zhuji realm. Hearing this, Jining immediately broke into a cold sweat and nodded repeatedly. She originally thought that, as Suli said, she wanted to use this opportunity to break through directly, but she didn't expect that there was such a drawback. After reminding Jining, Suli didn't stay long and continued to go back to the quiet room to copy the soul tactics. This time, she didn't hang up the "Do Not Disturb" sign. After all, she couldn't achieve anything by practicing in isolation for a day. Early the next morning, as soon as the best time for practice passed, Fan Zisong appeared in front of the hall and asked warmly, "Junior sister apprentices, are you ready?" "Senior fellow apprentice." Jining, who was wearing a pink disciple robe, ran to Fan Zisong with a happy face. Suli walked slowly behind her with an indifferent expression as always. Seeing the two girls, the bitterness in Fan Zisong's eyes disappeared completely. He waved his hand and a flying cloud flew over. "It's late. Let's go to the main peak." "Okay." Jining responded, and then a trace of doubt flashed in her eyes. She couldn't help but ask, "By the way, senior fellow apprentice, why haven't I seen Master recently?" A trace of unnaturalness flashed on Fan Zisong's face. He forced a smile and said, "Master is a little busy. You should see her when you come back from the spiritual pool." Jining didn't doubt him. She nodded and soon left her doubts behind. She looked at the direction of the main peak with expectation in her eyes. Seeing this scene, Fan Zisong sighed in his heart, "I hope what Senior Wang said is true." He didn't count on Wang Yu, who was cold and indifferent. Suli glanced at Fan Zisong's worried look. She didn't say anything and turned to look at the main peak. There was a trace of hesitation in her heart, but it was soon replaced by determination. The time had come. Why should she escape? The flying cloud rose straight up. After crossing the sea of clouds, it finally came to the top of the sea of clouds, the square of the hall of the main peak. It seemed that the spiritual pool was about to open, so the hall of the main peak was heavily guarded at this time. The pneuma in the air made Fan Zisong nervous. This was the second time he came to the hall of the main peak. When he was very young, he was ignorant and didn't fear it. Now he knew that there were far more practitioners of Jindan realm on the main peak than on other peaks. But even so, he was still calm. After all, he had stepped into Jindan realm. Although there was a gap, it was not big. Seeing Fan Zisong's performance, the elder in the dark couldn't help but nod secretly. He said to himself with pity, "Fan Zisong has a good temperament. I don't know what happened on Danxia Mount. Why did he leave the sect? Even the spiritual pool of Jindan realm can't attract him. Well, as long as Wang Yu agrees, I don't care." After a few breaths, Fan Zisong had taken them to the gate of the hall of the main peak. A dignified elder in a white robe stepped out of the hall and said solemnly, "Fan Zisong, have you really made up your mind?" Fan Zisong bowed quickly and said in a deep voice, "First elder, I have made up my mind." "You?" "Alas." First elder shook his head and sighed. He couldn't force Fan Zisong. But as the first elder of Huajian sect, he naturally hoped that Fan Zisong could stay and contribute to Huajian sect. Seeming to know what first elder was thinking, Fan Zisong saluted again and said, "Even if I am in the 25 sects, I dare not forget the kindness of Huajian sect. I will try my best to learn from the senior fellow apprentice of Fujian Mount and become a core disciple of the 25 sects to enhance the influence of Huajian sect." At this point, First Elder couldn't blame Fan Zisong, so he waved his hand and said slowly, "In this case, you can leave now." "Yes, First Elder." Fan Zisong heard the rejection in First Elder's words, but he didn't care. He turned his head to give Jining and Su Li an encouraging look and left without hesitation. He believed that Su Li and Jining would not be in any danger on the main peak. Senior fellow apprentice, Jining stared blankly at Fan Zisong's departure, and finally realized that something was wrong. Subconsciously, she was about to say something to Su Li when First Elder suddenly waved his hand and took them away from the place. After a while, the white cloth in front of Su Li's eyes faded, and the entrance of a cave came into view. It was dark in the cave, and nothing could be seen, like a huge mouth that was about to swallow people. This is the forbidden area of Huajian sect, and also the location of the spiritual pool. You two little girls, follow me closely and don't fall behind. The First Elder instructed and walked inside. A strange look flashed in Su Li's eyes, and she walked behind. Jining showed a look of fear on her face. She quickly pulled Su Li's sleeve and followed in a panic. Chapter 376. The cave was not deep. After walking for a while, they reached the end. A pool of ethereal spiritual pool with light green mist came into view. Is this the spiritual pool that senior fellow apprentice mentioned? Jin Ying's eyes sparkled. She took a deep breath and suddenly felt that her body was cleansed by the green pneuma, which was extremely comfortable. This spiritual pool was built by our headmaster in imitation of the secret realm of shattered spirits. It is made by soaking hundreds of spiritual flowers. The spiritual power is mild and pure, which is of great benefit to practice. You too should cherish it and don't waste this opportunity. First Elder turned back and said. Su Li and Jining agreed in unison, and then stepped into the pool one after another, sitting down and slowly meditating. Seeing this scene, First Elder was relieved and turned away. Shortly after he left, Su Li opened her eyes quietly. She caught a wisp of flower nimbus with a light wave of her hand, and her eyes flashed with contemplation. Although there are many kinds of flower nimbus, it is indeed the spiritual pool that Hua Yan and I built together. It is divided into 2 levels. This should be the upper-level spiritual pool used to reward disciples in Zhuji realm. I remember that there was a secret passage leading to the lower-level spiritual pool used by disciples in Jindan realm. Thinking of this, Su Li glanced at Jining, who was concentrating on absorbing nimbus by the side of the pool. She quietly got up and left the spiritual pool. She walked silently to the smooth stone wall at the end of the cave, and pinched a strange tactical pattern mark with both hands. The originally tightly closed stone wall immediately cracked, and a stone peak that could allow one person to pass through appeared. A desolate breath came from the stone path in the stone crack. Su Li frowned slightly and flashed into it. The stone crack immediately disappeared and returned to its original appearance without any flaws. It was dark in the deep stone path, and the ground was rugged, but it didn't affect Su Li's speed. It seems that this stone path has been abandoned since it was built. Even if I maintain it with the tactical matrix, it has been damaged. With this thought in mind, Su Li went down along the sloping ground. After a while, she finally saw a light. At the same time, a strange laughter came from the light. Giggle, under the bright spiritual stone lamp, 3 figures appeared. Su Li's good friend, immortal Hua Yan in a purple robe, was sitting in the spiritual pool. On the bank of the spiritual pool, Su Zini, the manager of Jinlo group of Danxia Mount, was standing. Su Zini was dressed in a red dress with light makeup, looking radiant. She squinted her phoenix eyes and looked down at immortal Hua Yan condescendingly. She chuckled and said in a threatening tone, "Lord Hua, do you still want to continue the stalemate with me?" At the same time, the cold-faced elder behind Su Zini took a step forward, full of pressure. His cultivation had reached the peak of Jindan realm, and he was half a step away. Reaching the realm. Hua Yan's face is slightly pale. She forcibly suppresses the discomfort in her pubic region and sneers coldly, "You've invited a half-step Yuanying realm expert to help me. Miss Su, you really think highly of me." At the same time, Hua Yan sighed in her heart. She thought that Wang Yu and others had successfully prevented Su Zini from getting the treasure integrated into the tactical matrix, but she didn't expect that Su Zini had already succeeded in secret. Today, she took people to the bottom of the spiritual pool without anyone noticing. She almost broke through to Yuanying realm, but God was not on her side. The breakthrough was interrupted at the critical moment, and she was seriously injured immediately. At this moment, she was no match for Su Zini, not to mention Yuanying realm. The forbidden area was sealed all year round, so she couldn't send a message to other elders for help. She was like a fish on the chopping block. Su Zini smiled sweetly. Immortal Hua Yan, what are you talking about? You were as famous as Holy Girl Su in those days. Now Holy Girl Su has passed away. Although she hasn't broken through to Yuanying realm, she has cultivated for more than 2,000 years, and her foundation is unfathomable. I can't be too careful. Hearing Su Zini's seemingly complimentary but actually sarcastic words, Hua Yan didn't get angry. Instead, she nodded approvingly. Yes, even if I am doomed to die today, my means are not what you, a junior of the Su family, can deal with. Su Zini's face changed slightly, and she finally stopped joking. She sneered, Immortal Hua Yan, you deserve to be the task of a holy girl. However, why do you want to die for a broken tactical matrix? Hand over the key of Starstack tactical matrix, and I won't embarrass you. Don't force me to use extreme means. Hua Yan lowered her head and sighed, I also want to hand over the key. Su Zini was slightly happy when she heard her tone was relaxed. Before she spoke, she heard the second half of Hua Yan's words, but I don't trust the credibility of the Su family. Besides, I can't give the relic of my best friend to the Su family that she hates the most. As soon as this was said, Su Zini immediately became extremely ugly, and she said in a cold voice, You dare to fool me. Elder Qi, do it. Swish. The cold-faced elder was about to punch forward immediately. Hua Yan's eyes flashed coldly with determination. She touched the blood-colored stone in her arms and was about to crush it. All of a sudden, clatter. The sound of two stones falling sounded extremely harsh in the quiet underground forbidden area. The cold-faced elder's face changed slightly, and he immediately stopped and looked in the direction of the sound. Was there someone there? He didn't notice it at all just now. Hua Yan also looked back in surprise. The forbidden area was different from the outside world. How could someone come at this time? At the same time, she couldn't help but feel a little surprised. But when she saw that the person was a little girl of 13 or 14 years old, wearing a pink dress unique to children with immortal latency, the rising hope was immediately extinguished. It turns out to be a lost child with immortal latency. Su Zini obviously knew Huajian sect very well. She was relieved after seeing Su Li, but she was also afraid of any changes, so she said quickly, Elder Qi, we have no time to lose. Kill the girl as well. The cold-faced elder nodded and slapped Su Li from a distance. He was used to being an executioner, and he had no pity. It was the easiest to kill the child with immortal latency first. How dare you? I'm not dead yet. If you want to kill a disciple of Huajian sect, you have to kill me first. Hua Yan said with a grim expression. She ignored the injury in her pubic region and flew out of the spiritual pool. The blood-colored stone flew out of her arms, which was full of cracks in the blink of an eye and was about to explode. Sensing the extremely evil pneuma in the blood-colored stone, Su Zini's beautiful face changed. She waved a spiritual power to interrupt it, but at this moment, swish. The blood-colored stone covered with cracks suddenly disappeared out of thin air, and Hua Yan and Su Zini were both stunned. At this time, there was a loud bang in the distance. The two looked at the same time, only to see the cold-faced elder retreating in horror until he retreated to Su Zini's side. Elder Qi, what's going on? Before Su Zini figured out the situation, Elder Qi gasped and said with a hint of surprise, I hit a barrier with my palm just now, and was almost injured by the countershock. That girl is not an ordinary person. Su Zini's face changed slightly, and she immediately looked at Su Li. Then she fell into a complete panic. When did that stone end up in the hands of this little girl? Su Li frowned and held the blood-colored stone. She mobilized the power of the star-stacked matrix. After a while, all the cracks on the blood-colored stone disappeared, and the evil Numa disappeared completely. Seeing this, Su Li breathed a sigh of relief. She looked up at Hua Yan, who was full of surprise and doubt, and said helplessly, "I have told you before that this thing is evil, and it's better to discard it earlier. I didn't expect that you still have it with you." Hearing this, Hua Yan's calm face was completely changed. Tears appeared in her eyes, and she trembled. You are," with a gentle smile on her face. Su Li nodded gently. Then she put away the blood-colored stone, and looked at Su Zini and Hua Yan. Her eyes turned cold, and her lips curved into an evil smile, "A lost child with immortal latency. I am not lost. How dare you attack my good friend? Have you thought about how to die? A good friend of immortal Hua Yan? A girl of 13 or 14 years old? No. Anyway, Su Zini was the 7th miss of the Su family. She thought of something quickly. She looked horrified and screamed, "Holy girl Su, you are not dead." Su Li smiled indifferently. Her fingertip stroked the universe ring, and a pocket-sized dagger flashed. "You are the first person who said my name after I came back to the secular world. In return, I will let you die quickly." Swoosh! In a moment shorter than the blink of an eye, a bright sword light flashed, which even Elder Qi couldn't capture. A blood mark appeared on Su Zini's neck. The light in her eyes dimmed quickly, and she fell to the ground. "Run!" Elder Qi was scared out of his wits. He was full of horror, and there was only one thought in his mind. He didn't care about Su Zini's body at all. Without saying a word, he turned around and fled to the gap of the tactical matrix that had been broken. Puff! The same bright sword light flew out through the heart. Elder Qi didn't have time to say his last words. He fell in front of the gap, and looked at the exit with remorse. His Numa dissipated quickly, and finally disappeared. Su Li stretched out her hand, and the dagger flew back to her hand with a swish. She looked relaxed. When she was in the 8th hurdle of Lianqi realm, she could deal with the power of the peak of Jindan realm with only her physical body, not to mention that she had passed the star path and reached the 17th hurdle of Lianqi realm. In terms of strength, even Su Li didn't know where her limit was now. However, at least she could have a try to fight with the practitioners in Yuanying realm, who were once regarded as powerful by her. Su Li. Hua Yan walked to Su Li excitedly and looked at Su Li from left to right. Finally, she took a deep breath and said nothing. She just compared Su Li's height, which was not fully grown, and said seriously, "I am much taller than you now." Su Li couldn't help but laugh. She waved a green spiritual power into the spiritual pool. "Heal first. I won't leave in a short time." "Okay." Hua Yan didn't hesitate and immediately returned to the spiritual pool to heal. There was no need to ask more questions between close friends. 2 days later, Hua Yan's injury was completely healed. A Numa that was about to break through emerged, and it was even stronger than that of the last breakthrough. Seeing this, a trace of guilt flashed in Su Li's eyes. When the news of her death spread, although many people gloated and were happy, many people were also sad for her. Among them, Hua Yan must be the one who was sad and pitiful for her. Even Hua Yan's difficulty in breaking through for so many years was likely to be related to her. Chapter 377. Whoosh, genuine energy surged through the water and made a sound. Su Li narrowed her eyes and saw a round golden elixir spit out from Hua Yan's mouth. It broke and reorganized quickly, gradually forming a little person sitting cross-legged. Su Li immediately breathed a sigh of relief. It was very dangerous to break the elixir and form the Yuanying without enough accumulation. Hua Yan's accumulation was very terrible. This step was completed in the blink of an eye without any sloppiness. What was left was the molding of the Yuanying. The clearer the face of the Yuanying was, the more terrible the strength would be. Seeing that it would take a long time for Hua Yan to mold the Yuanying, Su Li also sat down on the shore. She touched the universe ring and took out the tactical matrix plate for camouflage from Qin Xianghan. After looking at it carefully for a moment, she put her fingertips into the circular pattern in the center of the tactical matrix plate and pressed it gently. Crack! The mechanism was triggered. The circular tactical matrix plate immediately popped out a circle of arcs and turned into a very regular ball. Su Li's eyes narrowed, and her pupils showed shock. This was the usual method of tactical matrix, but it could only be used when one reached the master realm. The tactical matrix plate made by the tactical matrix master was not a complete whole, but composed of many tactical rings. The number of tactical rings determined the difficulty of making it and the level of the big tactical matrix released by the tactical matrix plate. The 9-ring tactical matrix plate is close to the master realm. No wonder it can even deceive the rules of the secret realm of shattered spirits. In this way, I don't have to worry about exposing my identity in a short time when I master this tactical matrix. Su Li breathed a long sigh of relief because the tension of breaking through the 17th hurdle of Lianqi realm was mostly gone. She was lucky. Even if she couldn't find the fragments of reincarnation mirror to improve the shielding power, it didn't matter. However, the 9-ring tactical matrix plate was still 1 ring away from the master realm. The power of shielding the nature's mystery was limited. When she reached a certain realm, it would inevitably fail. She couldn't ignore the matter of finding the fragments of reincarnation mirror to restore reincarnation mirror. While pondering, Su Li also wondered who made this thing. In Jiuzhou region, there was no tactical matrix master who was close to a grandmaster. Could it be that someone had made a big step forward from the master realm in the past 1,000 years? After thinking for a moment, Su Li stopped thinking. If there was such a person, she would definitely meet him in the future. In her previous life, she had reached the middle stage of the master matrix and was not far from the late stage. Now she had a lot of experience. With the help of the matrix plate of 9 rings, it would not take long for her to reach the late stage. But she had no time and energy to make the matrix plate of 9 rings. After spending a quarter of an hour to familiarize herself with the matrix plate, Su Li closed the mechanism and put the matrix plate back to its original state. Then she took out the triangular copper coin and continued to sense the characters. Time passed unknowingly. 1 day and 1 night later. Hua Yan, who was sitting in the floral spiritual pool, trembled. She spat out a mouthful of turbid air that resembled a white dragon. It stayed in the void for a moment before dispersing. Then, she opened her eyes and felt the completely different nascent soul power in her body. She couldn't suppress the joy in her heart. After cultivating for more than 2,000 years, he had finally reached the original infant stage. Su Li seemed to feel something. She raised her head and saw this scene. She couldn't help but smile. Hua Yan, congratulations. Although the voice was light, it was full of sincerity. Hua Yan came back to herself and chuckled, saying, I won't thank you. I have helped you manage the sect for so many years, and I can still afford this little reward. Su Li rolled her eyes helplessly. When she founded the sect, she clearly said that Hua Yan was the only owner of Huajian's sect because of her sensitive identity. But now she obviously wanted to deny it. However, she was no longer Holy Girl Su now. Although her identity was more dangerous than before, it was hidden in the dark, and no one knew it. She didn't bother to argue about who the owner of Huajian's sect was. Seeing that Su Li didn't refuse this time, Hua Yan's eyes suddenly lit up. After more than 1,000 years, she finally figured it out. Holy Girl Su seemed to be glorious, but she was also controlled by Yushu sect. Although Huajian's sect was small, it completely belonged to her. Of course, she also understood that Su Li was not burdened by fame back then. The only one worthy of her sacrifice was Elder Mo Qin. Li, since you have chosen to show up, what are your plans next? Hearing Hua Yan's question, Su Li smiled indifferently, but the message revealed in her eyes made Hua Yan feel inexplicably cold. If I die, everything will be over. But, since I am still alive, I will naturally clear up the mess of those years. As soon as she said this, Su Li's eyes flashed coldly. Hua Yan swallowed quietly, only feeling that the soles of her feet were cold. She stared blankly at her friend whom she hadn't seen for many years, and finally realized that the gentle, kind and simple female practitioner in the past, the holy girl Su who could not even say a harsh word, had completely changed. At this time, Su Li suddenly turned back, smiled sweetly, and said, "Am I a little scary now?" "No." Hua Yan was stunned for a moment, and then immediately shook her head. With tears in her eyes, she bit her lip and choked, "I'm just a little happy that our holy girl Su can finally protect herself." She had persuaded Su Li more than once that a person of cultivation should not have a simple and warm heart, but every time, she got an indifferent smile from Su Li. She didn't know how many times she sighed secretly. While sighing, she also secretly helped Su Li to block many open and secret attacks. She didn't tell Su Li about these. But when she saw Su Li again as time went by, some things on her mind couldn't be hidden and were exposed. Su Li pursed her lips and smiled. She was so sensitive that she understood it as soon as Hua Yan mentioned it. But the words, "thank you," couldn't offset these things. In the future, the burden of Hua Jian's sect will not be carried by you alone. Su Li nodded softly. Hua Yan covered her mouth and cried with joy. She couldn't help but step forward and hug Su Li tightly. "Great. No matter what the 25 sects are, we sisters will make Huajian's sect survive for a long time if we work together." Su Li's eyes were not wet, but as soft as water, and she said softly in her heart, "What I want is more than just survival." After a short while, Su Li and Hua Yan both put away their emotions, adjusted their clothes, and sat opposite each other. After all, both of them were over 2,000 years old, and they couldn't control their emotions like ordinary women. "By the way, this is for you." Hua Yan smiled and took out an old rune from the universe ring. Su Li took it and smiled. This was the ancestral rune of the sect she made. As long as she was within the range of the star-stacked tactical matrix, she could inquire about all the news of the whole sect at will and talk directly with all the elders. Of course, if she encountered treasures like the tactical matrix for camouflage, it wouldn't work. "I asked you to make 2 at the beginning, but you didn't want to. Now it works." Hua Yan snorted and returned to the usual tone of talking with Su Li. She didn't look like a mighty practitioner in Yuanying realm at all. Su Li couldn't help but laugh. After so many years, Hua Yan was still the same as when she met her for the first time. It was so nice. Holding the ancestral rune for a moment, Hua Yan immediately learned about the recent situation from the first elder. She couldn't help frowning. "Li, Fan Zisang left the sect." "You," Su Li shook her head, "I won't interfere with his decision and let him go. My identity is sensitive now, and anyone involved with me will be in danger. You should also be careful." Hua Yan was slightly shocked. Although Su Li's words were vague, she didn't doubt her at all. It was an extremely shocking thing for a 13-year-old to recultivate to the level of Yuanying realm. "In the future, I will still practice in Danxia Mount. You send someone to pay attention to Wang Yu. As long as she doesn't hinder me, don't touch her." Hua Yan said yes and didn't say anything. In the past, with Su Li's temperament, when she saw such a heartless person as Wang Yu, she would be angry and punish her to uphold justice for Fan Zisang. But now, Su Li's approach was a little confusing. She could clearly perceive that Su Li took good care of the junior named Fan Zisang. "Well, Jining should wake up in 3 days. Contact me at any time if you need anything." Su Li shook the ancestral rune in her hand and disappeared in a flash. Hua Yan was stunned and smiled bitterly. She lamented that her old friend's temperament had become eccentric and profound, but she was happy for her rebirth. She was the only one who could understand the complicated feelings within. Su Li quietly returned to the upper spiritual pool and saw that Jining was still trying to absorb the spiritual power and suppressed her cultivation to the peak of Yunti realm. She couldn't help but smile and sat down to continue to study the triangular copper coin. A few hours later, 3 days were up. First Elder Hua Bei appeared in front of the cave on time. He took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "It's time. Su Yu, Jining, come out." Jining was awakened and immediately climbed out of the spiritual pool. The water vapor on her body evaporated, and her big innocent eyes were full of excitement. Hualing Pool, it was really great. 3 days saved her several years of hard practice, and she directly reached the peak of Yunti realm. As long as she consolidated for a period of time, she could directly break through to Lianshui realm. Clatter, the sound of water behind her made Jining look back. Su Li calmly walked out of the spiritual pool and said softly, "Go out." Jin Ying's eyes turned into crescent moons. First Elder waited at the door for a long time. When he saw the 2 little girls coming out, he pretended to nod naturally and said, "The peak of Yunti realm is very good. Now go back to Danxia Mount." "Yes, Elder." Jining and Su Li both responded obediently and left with the steward. First Elder looked at their backs and fixed his eyes on Su Li. He felt strange. Why did the headmaster tell us not to interfere with any action of this little girl? Could it be that he has taken a fancy to her innate talent? But there's nothing special about a 70% spiritual root. Even if he likes her, why does the headmaster ignore her and let her stay on Danxia Mount? I really can't figure it out. Shaking his head, First Elder didn't care too much. It was difficult to figure out the headmaster's mind. They just needed to follow the orders. At this moment, on Danxia Mount, Jining walked around the waist of the peak, but she didn't see Fan Zisong. She couldn't help but look lost and murmured, "What First Elder said is not true." Senior fellow apprentice is really, at this moment, a sneer came from behind. Chapter 378. Hearing the voice, Jining didn't get angry. Instead, she trembled slightly and suddenly looked back. When she saw Jin Wei coming from a distance with an arrogant face, all kinds of bad memories of her childhood in the Jincheng Imperial Palace immediately came to her mind, which made her little face as pale as snow. Royal brother, why are you here? Aren't you? Jining was so scared that she began to stammer. Until Su Li gently held her little hand, she calmed down and regained her senses. The Jincheng Imperial Palace was no longer under the control of the Empress, and she was not as weak as before. What was there to be afraid of? Seeing that Jining recovered so quickly, Jin Wei's eyes flashed with anger, but he didn't show it immediately. He sneered and snorted, "My good sister, do you want to ask why I am not in the Ymen Mount?" After that, his pneuma shook, and he exuded the pneuma of Lianqi realm. The first hurdle of Lianqi realm? Jin Ying's eyes suddenly widened. She made rapid progress by relying on the Hualing Pool. What did Jin Wei rely on? How could he directly break through? Seeing Jin Ying's reaction, Jin Wei finally felt that his identity and status were back in his hands. He couldn't help laughing and said proudly, "Thanks to Master Wang Yu, I have been accepted as her last disciple. Fan Zisong is a traitor, and I will kill him sooner or later. You are just an ordinary disciple of the master. Call me senior fellow apprentice." Su Li was calm. With her eyesight, she could naturally see at a glance that Jin Wei's cultivation was spoiled by excessive enthusiasm. It was the end of his life when he reached the peak of Lianqi realm. If he didn't rely on external forces, it was not a problem for Jin Wei to reach Zhuji realm with his talent. He destroyed his future to improve his cultivation, and he was still proud. Obviously, he didn't know anything. Wang Yu, Su Li glanced at the silent hall behind her. Her eyes were deep, and no one knew what she was thinking. Jining was shocked and angry when she heard Jin Wei's words. Her lips trembled with anger, and she didn't know what to say. Finally, she put on a straight face and stubbornly said, regardless of the old man in the costume of a supervisor standing behind Jean Wei, I only have one senior fellow apprentice, not you. You. Jean Wei's smile disappeared, and he was even angrier. After changing his expression several times, he finally became serious and said coldly, little bitch, like your mother. Steward Wu, teach her a lesson. As he said, he turned his eyes and fell on Su Li, who was standing quietly. He said covetously, and this little beauty. Take her back to the bedroom. He immediately nodded with a smile. He stepped forward and slapped Jean Wei's face, and grabbed Su Li with the other hand. He was Wang Yu's henchman, and Wang Yu let Jean Wei do whatever they wanted. Naturally, he would not disobey her, even if what was happening in front of him had seriously violated the sect rules. Master! Master, Master, Wei! Jean Ning retreated in fear and shouted. Jean Wei laughed and said, all of this is tacitly allowed by the master. How can he come to save you? His face was full of pleasure, but at the same time, there was a hint of lust. She thought that she would never be able to get Jean Ning again in this life, but she didn't expect that after just a few months, not only did Jean Ning become her plaything, but she also had an unexpected harvest. Stop! At this critical moment, an angry roar suddenly came from the horizon. At the same time, a flying sword turned into a white light and flashed. Puchi! The fifth steward's arms fell off. Ah! The atmosphere was stagnant for a moment. The scream of the fifth steward suddenly spread to the sky. Jean Wei, who was still fantasizing in his mind, was scared and ran away without saying anything. He did not care about the fifth steward at all. But before he ran far, a cold snort came from the nothingness. When did such a scum appear in Huajian sect? Let me clean them up. Before he finished his words, the sword light lit up again. Jean Wei was scared out of his wits and cried, Master, save me. Clang! A red light shot out from the hall on the top of the mountain and blocked the white light. With a clang, two flying swords were inserted between the legs of Jean Wei. In the next moment, a voice more tragic than the fifth steward's resounded through Danxia Mount, causing the disciples of all peaks to stop what they were doing and look up curiously. Danxia Mount. What's going on? Li Guang of Fujian Mount put down the half of the dagger in his hand irritably and sighed, well, it's not suitable to study runes today. I remember that Wang Yu should be on the peak. How could something go wrong? He had doubts in his mind, but he did not hesitate. He flashed out of the hall and flew to Danxia Mount. At this moment, on Danxia Mount, a cold and tall young man floated from the nothingness. When he saw Wang Yu flying out of the hall, his eyes showed undisguised hatred. You can't distinguish right from wrong and are selfish. Old witch Hung Yu, you are still as disgusting as before. Su Li, who stood still as if she was scared, saw the person, and an unexpected surprise flashed in her eyes. Why did he appear here? In her mind, it should be the first elder of the main peak who stopped him, but she did not expect. Wang Yu did not seem to hear the young man's sneer. Instead, she stared at the familiar face of the young man and frowned. After a while, she finally remembered the identity of the young man. She panicked and trembled. You are Beixing? Huh? Su Li tilted her head and glanced at Wang Yu. Wasn't he Bei Shaoyang? Bei Shaoyang grinned when he heard the words, showing his teeth glowing with cold white light. I haven't seen you for 100 years. I'm really honored that Martial Uncle Hung Yu still remembers me. Wang Yu was instantly distracted. How could Bei Shaoyang let go of such a good opportunity? He pinched the sword gesture with his fingertips, and the flying sword turned into a white rainbow, stabbing at the former's throat like lightning. Su Li raised her eyebrows and did not stop him. But things in the world never went as one wished. Second brother. A vigorous voice sounded from behind Bei Shaoyang, full of excitement and longing. Bei Shaoyang, who almost succeeded, immediately trembled. The sword gesture disappeared, and the flying sword fell to the ground with a clang. Wang Yu recovered from the shock. When she saw Li Guang behind Bei Xiaoyang, the haze in her eyes became more intense. But in the blink of an eye, the haze disappeared, and her expression changed to that of anger. Senior fellow apprentice Li, your disciple is really arrogant after going to the 25 sections. She even wanted to kill me just now. What Wang Yu said seemed to be true, and he also saw the scene just now. He could only suppress the joy in his heart for the time being, frowning and asking, "Second brother, is it true?" In the face of his master's accusation, Bei Xiaoyang sighed in his heart. He turned back and stared at Wang Yu coldly, saying word by word, "Master, if I say that the so-called genius with acquired physique of sword who was accepted by the 25 sects was fabricated by Wang Yu, will you believe it?" "What?" Li Guang's eyes widened, and he was shocked. "Nonsense." Wang Yu looked exasperated, as if Bei Xiaoyang was really deceiving everyone. "I spoke for you in front of that senior in vain, and helped you rise to the top in one step. Now that you have become a practitioner of Jindan realm, you come back to slander me. Is this how you repay your benefactor?" "Benefactor?" Bei Xiaoyang almost vomited when he heard Wang Yu's words, and his tone became colder. "You imprisoned me for 10 years and made my life worse than death, and you want me to recognize you as my benefactor? How dare you?" Wang Yu's almond-shaped eyes widened, and she snapped, "When did I imprison you? All these years, I have contributed to the sect conscientiously and never left. If you want to slander me, you have to find a suitable explanation, right?" Li Guang stood aside, and the more he listened, the more confused he became. On one side, it was his disciple whom he regarded as his own, and on the other side, it was his junior sister apprentice whom he had been with for nearly 1,000 years. Which side should he believe? A glimmer of light flashed in Su Li's eyes, and she listened with great interest. It seemed that finding Wang Yu was more interesting than she thought. "Li, I personally brought Wang Yu into the sect. She has a clean background and a good talent," but Hua Yan's voice came into Su Li's ears through the ancestral rune, and her tone was a little disappointed. She also saw that Wang Yu was a little weird now. "It doesn't matter. People always make mistakes. I'll deal with the matter of Wang Yu." "What's the matter with the young man named Beixing?" Su Li interrupted her. Hua Yan breathed a sigh of relief and replied, "I have some impression of Beixing. He made a name for himself in the sect more than 400 years ago. Although he doesn't have the heavenly spiritual root, he has a superb state of mind and fast practice. After breaking through the Zhuji realm, he traveled with Wang Yu and was accepted as a disciple by the 25 sections. Since then, he has never come back. Now it seems." The so-called 25 sects, Su Li curled her lips slightly and took over the topic, "It's just an excuse." Hua Yan was silent and furious. If Su Li hadn't stood on the scene, she would have shown up and questioned Wang Yu. "Don't worry too much. Although he was imprisoned for 10 years, he lived a good life after escaping." "How do you know?" Hua Yan was stunned. "I saw him before." While the two were talking, there was a new change on the top of Danxia Mount. "Master, you don't believe me? Senior fellow apprentice, my friendship with you for 1,000 years is not as good as this little bastard's 300 years. Bei Xiaoyang and Wang Yu stared at Li Guang. Li Guang was full of bitterness. In desperation, he finally looked at Jining and Su Li. As for Jin Wei, he had fainted because of the pain at the moment. "You two little girls should be Jining and Su Yu. Now I want to ask you, why did they fight just now?" Seeing this scene, Wang Yu's eyes immediately brightened. She secretly transmitted the sound to Jining and Su Li, "You can't lie against your conscience about how I treat you. Just now, when Jin Wei made trouble, I happened to be practicing in isolation. Sorry to scare you." Jining suddenly felt pressured. Thinking that Wang Yu did treat her disciples well in ordinary days, her doubts in her heart faded a lot. But she still felt very disgusted that Wang Yu saved Jin Wei's life with her sword just now. Therefore, she naturally turned her eyes to Su Li. It was better for her junior sister apprentice to make the decision for such a big event. Seeing this, Li Guang asked bluntly, "Little girl Su, you say it." In an instant, everyone's eyes were focused on Su Li, including Bei Xiaoyang. Su Li raised her eyebrows. It was hard to tell whether she was too scared or she was really indifferent. Chapter 379. Master. Master, I don't know how she treats me. Senior fellow apprentice Jean bullied me. Su Li's expression froze for a moment, and she seemed to have just reacted. Her face was full of panic, and her voice came out in a stutter. Wang Yu was angry when she heard it. She secretly scolded Su Li for being so weak that she was scared out of her wits by this scene. Forget it, Li Guang sighed. It was better to investigate by himself than to expect a teenage girl to explain the reason. Master, you said that they are all apprentices of Wang Yu. Even if they can tell us the reason, we can't believe it. For now, we can only ask the Lord to come out and preside over it. Then we will know who is right and who is wrong. Bei Xiaoyang temporarily put aside his inquiry about Su Li and stared at his master seriously. Li Guang was speechless. The Lord had been practicing in isolation for a long time, but this was a secret of Huajian's sect, and it couldn't be said on such an occasion. Wang Yu sneered secretly. If Hua Yan was still alive, how could she dare to be so blatant? Su Zini's means were not simple. Bei Xiaoyang sensed Li Guang's embarrassment and frowned. Everything seemed to go back to square one, and no one could tell who was the villain. Su Li stood on one side and held Jining, who was pale, without saying a word, like an outsider. She was not stupid enough to expose herself in such a crowded environment. After a moment of stalemate, Li Guang sighed in his heart and said softly, "Second brother, you just came back, and you must be very tired. How about going back to the mount with me to have a rest? I will send a letter to the headmaster. No matter what the result is, I will give you an explanation." Bei Xiaoyang's body tightened, and he stared at Wang Yu, who was fearless. Finally, he couldn't stand the faint pleading in Li Guang's tone and nodded in agreement. After his eyes stayed on Su Li for a moment, he flew away with Li Guang. When the figures of the two disappeared into Fujian Mount, Wang Yu's calm face was completely gloomy. Seeing Jin Wei, who had fainted, and the two, shivering, female disciples, she was so angry that she swung her sleeves and left. Although she very much wanted to punish Jining and Su Li, who failed at the critical moment, Bei Xiaoyang was still on Fujian Mount. She was not stupid enough to take action at this time and be caught. At that time, even if the Lord did not come out, the first elder of the main peak would have the right to deal with her, which was not what she wanted. We're only missing one offering, yet something has to go wrong at this time. Wang Yu returned to the main hall with urgency in her eyes. It's not long before the appointed time. At this moment, after Jining and Su Li were taken back to the bedroom by the maids, they were immediately strictly guarded, which made Jining feel a little bad. But under Su Li's hint, she did not try to resist and obediently went back to her room to practice. Su Li also returned to the quiet room and sat cross-legged. She took out 2 universe rings from her pocket, which were obtained from Su Zini and the elder, who was half a step to Yuanying realm. The Su family is still the same as before, overflowing with wealth. Scanning the storage of spiritual stones in their universe rings with her psychic awareness, Su Li sighed in her heart. If she still followed the ordinary path of cultivation, these resources would be enough for her to practice to the late stage of Jindan realm. But now, for the 17th hurdle of Lianqi realm, it was just a drop in the bucket. Thinking of this, she quickly shifted her attention to an area carefully kept by Su Zini. Suddenly, her eyes focused, and a rune with a pale yellow halo fell out with a slight weight in her hand. This seems to be the key to a cave, and it's not complete. Su Li looked at it carefully for a moment and suddenly remembered that Su Zini asked Hua Yan for Starstack Tactical Matrix before. Was it related to this thing? The use of Starstack Tactical Matrix was not only to protect the sect. When she was a holy girl, she once used Starstack Tactical Matrix to break the inhibition of several caves and won a large number of cultivation resources for Yushu's sect. If that's the case, then everything will work, Suli guessed with 80% certainty. With Su Zini's wealth, there was no need to focus on the extremely troublesome Starstack Tactical Matrix. It would be much easier to get the resources from the higher-ups of the 25 sections. However, since it has come to the step of breaking the inhibition, all the keys should have been born, and Su Zini also has contact with other people who hold the keys. Thinking of this, Su Li quickly opened the universe ring of the Elder, who was half a step to Yuanying realm, but didn't find a similar key in it. If I had known this earlier, I would have kept her alive and searched her soul. Su Li felt a little pity, but she didn't worry about it. If Su Zini really had contact with other key owners, sooner or later someone would find out about Huajian's sect if Su Zini didn't show up. I don't know if the resources of a cultivation cave can help me step into the 18th hurdle of Lianqi realm and officially Zhuji realm. Su Li put away the 2 rings and looked at them leisurely. Although she was now only 1 level away from the legendary 18th hurdle of Lianqi realm, she felt that there was a natural moat in between when she really practiced, and the energy needed was immeasurable. She had prepared hundreds of Zhuji elixirs for herself before, plus the universe rings of Su Zini and the Elder. There were 300 Zhuji elixirs. Ordinary practitioners could transform the genuine energy of Zhuji realm at most 300 elixirs. No matter how deep the foundation was, it was absolutely enough. At the 17th hurdle of Lianqi realm, she could choose to break through to Zhuji realm at any time, but seeing the legendary realm in front of her, how could she be reconciled? Of course, if it took too long or she really couldn't break through, Su Li wouldn't fight to the death like the ancient disciple Black Lotus mentioned. She was still young now, and she could afford to delay for a while. After sorting out her thoughts, Su Li took out a top-grade spiritual stone and held it in her hand, and fell silent. At the same time, on Fujian Mount. Master, is what you said true? Headmaster hasn't come out for 100 years. Bei Shaoyang's expression changed slightly. For Huajian's sect, Hua Yan was the pillar. If anything happened to Hua Yan, Huajian's sect would definitely suffer an unprecedented impact. Li Guang nodded with worry. If not, how could the headmaster not show up when there was such a big conflict on Danxia Mount? I dare not disturb her easily, in case other sects notice something wrong. Bei Shaoyang's heart sank. After a moment of silence, he said, Master, do you know what I saw when I was imprisoned by Wang Yu? Second brother, she is your senior master after all. Li Guang's face was slightly ugly. He really didn't want to listen to Bei Shaoyang continue to slander Wang Yu. Bei Shaoyang's mouth was full of bitterness, and he roared with a trace of pain in his deep tone, Master. I saw first senior fellow apprentice there. As soon as this was said, Li Guang's body shook violently, his eyes were scattered, and his lips trembled uncontrollably. You, what did you say? Bei Shaoyang showed guilt and deep hatred. First senior fellow apprentice, was killed by Wang Yu in order to save me. He turned his palm, and a simple universe bag embroidered with the character, Heng, appeared in his hand. Li Guang stared at the universe bag blankly, and his eyes gradually turned red. Li Heng, the former first disciple of Fujian Mount, was his biological son. Li Heng had been missing for many years, and he still had a glimmer of hope in his heart, but he didn't expect that. It was Wang Yu who killed him. Master, I have refined the first-grade Jin Dan. Wang Yu is no match for me. I'm going to kill her now. Bei Shaoyang gritted his teeth and walked out with his sword, but was stopped by Li Guang, whose eyes were red. Master. Bei Shaoyang felt cold in his heart. He had proved that what he said was true. Could it be that the master still didn't believe him? Li Guang took a deep breath and said in a hoarse voice, Wang Yu hid too deeply. I'm worried if you go. Bei Shaoyang was stunned, and then his heart was filled with warmth and guilt. At the moment when he was stunned, Li Guang showed an unprecedented coldness on his face. He reached out and waved his hand. The small black sword on the sword rack in the hall buzzed and turned into a ray of black light that went into Li Guang's body. You and I will go together and kill her in person. Bei Xiaoyang's expression changed, and then he nodded fiercely. The two were about to go out of the hall side by side. However, at this moment, a slightly lazy female voice rang out. You are not allowed to go anywhere. Before the voice died away, the hall of the main peak of Fujian Mount was immediately covered by a transparent light curtain, which was extremely hard and could not be broken by people in Jindan realm. Such a change suddenly made Li Guang and his disciple absent-minded. Then they thought of something and suddenly looked behind them. A woman in a purple and gold Taoist robe stood quietly in the center of the hall. Her face was delicate and indifferent, with a trace of undisguised anger between her eyebrows. Headmaster. Li Guang was shocked. Sensing that Hua Yan's pneuma had become as elusive as the ocean, the sadness and anger in his heart were diluted a little. He asked in surprise, have you broken through? Hua Yan nodded slightly. Congratulations, Headmaster. Bei Xiaoyang hurriedly saluted. Although he had to leave Huajian's sect that year, he still regarded himself as a disciple of Huajian's sect in his heart. Don't stand on ceremony. I will personally investigate the matter of Wang Yu. If, as Beixing said, she has made an unforgivable mistake. Speaking of this, Hua Yan's eyes narrowed slightly, and there seemed to be a flame burning in them. My anger is not so easy to bear. Hearing Hua Yan's guarantee, Bei Xiaoyang finally calmed down. Then he hesitated for a moment and said, Headmaster, I was lucky to escape that year. Wang Yu's strength is definitely not as simple as it seems, and she has mastered many secret methods. Headmaster, you must not take it lightly. Hua Yan smiled slightly, don't worry. The Grand Elder of our sect will deal with this matter in person. No matter how many means Wang Yu has, she can't compare with the Grand Elder. She can't even escape from Huajian's sect now. Grand Elder? I have been away for hundreds of years. When did the sect have a Grand Elder? Bei Xiaoyang looked at his master inquiringly, but Li Guang was also puzzled. The most powerful person in Huajian's sect was Hua Yan. Where was the Grand Elder? Moreover, now that Hua Yan had broken through to Yuanying realm, what about the strength of the Grand Elder? Hua Yan knew that they were full of doubts, but she didn't explain. She just told them, don't tell anyone about my coming out of practice, including the existence of the Grand Elder. Do you understand? Hearing this, Li Guang and Bei Xiaoyang could only temporarily suppress their thoughts and salute helplessly. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.